Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of The Bat Around. The Bat Around is brought to you by Pressbox's Project Game Day. The place to be after this and every Ravens game this season is Pressbox's Project Game Day. Glenn Clark, Rita Hubbard, and former Ravens Super Bowl champion Femi Ayambadejo will react live to every game, offering their truly uncensored opinions about the team's decisions and results in each game. Plus, they'll be joined by other special guests during the year, and you can chime in live during each show as well. Watch the shows live at youtube.com/PressboxOnline or facebook.com/PressboxSports. And check Glenn Clark Radio or the NFL Chick on Twitter for a Zoom link that will allow you to be part of the show. So join Glenn, Rita, and Femi tomorrow after Ravens Titans and every game day this season. Project Game Day is brought to you by Superbook Sports, AJ Michaels, and HelpMyGamblingProblem.org. Zachary Allen Goodman, good morning. Good morning. Saturday morning to you.
When you came in, I said this is a good way to recap the Orioles season in dreary weather like this.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Not so much, but I don't know.
Today's crap. It is very overcast and on and off rainy. It looks like the sky's about to open up in any minute, just like my tear ducts when I think about how the Orioles season ended. Look, 101 wins. People asked me when they clinched the division, did I cry? How excited am I? How pumped am I? And I said, you know, I'll be pumped when they get past the ALCS because I've seen division winners and I've seen league championship series teams. I've never seen a team get to the World Series, and I've never seen an Orioles playoff team that didn't leave me heartbroken at the end of the season. Look, to say I'm heartbroken, I'm not heartbroken. This team wasn't supposed to be here. And I hate when people say that because it's a cop-out, right? It's excusing a mediocre to poor performance. Let's be realistic about this. It was a poor performance in the playoffs.
It was a terrible performance across the board.
It's excusing that.
Yeah.
But the fact remains, 2021, the Orioles lost 110 games. They won 84 last year, and they weren't supposed to. 83. They won 83 games last year, and they weren't supposed to. And then this year they won 101. 101 wins.
Yeah.
Most wins since 1979 for this franchise. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yep.
But it amounts to a hill of beans if you don't make it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If you get into the playoffs and you do what the Orioles did, and to be fair, what the Dodgers did, and what the Rays did, and what the Braves did. The 5 best records in all of baseball went 1-13 in the postseason. Yeah. And misery loves company, but there's no company for this kind of misery because you wanted your team that had the second best record in all of baseball and the most wins in the American League to assert their dominance. And it kind of showed us what the weaknesses are with this team. And the weaknesses that we kind of already knew, but didn't expect them to rear their ugly head in the way that they did. The fact that Grayson Rodriguez and Dean Kramer couldn't get out of the second inning in playoff starts, that's unacceptable, right?
Completely. You saw those two starts. They were completely uncompetitive. Grayson's start, he started off just a little bit wild. The nerves were clearly there for him. You could tell. Kramer, the home run, I mean, nothing went well in Kramer's outing. Like, there's no factor of Kramer's outing that makes me walk away from it happy about it. It was short. It was not good. 6 earned runs. I mean, just brutal. And again, Grayson's outing, some pitches were okay, but he was pretty wild. The nerves were there, clearly. The stuff wasn't on point like it usually is. Not the Grayson Rodriguez we've seen since the All-Star break. Just not the same guy. And even Kyle Bradish wasn't the guy that we've seen all season.
No, Kyle Bradish. And here's the thing.
He was okay. He was good. I wouldn't say he was the guy we see all season.
9 strikeouts in 4 2/3 innings on 85 pitches is damn good. And I'll tell you,
I expect him to go farther in a playoff game.
He should have, and he could have.
Well,
he
okay.
got
If we want to
pulled early,
you can make that argument.
He got pulled, and that's the thing. Okay, one, Kyle Bradish in every single start. If you go back and look, where he went 6 innings and gave up 2 runs, those 2 runs generally came in the same inning.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to say every single, I don't have the stats in front of me to back that. But
it seems like that.
But I feel like that's what happened a majority of the time. That those 2 runs came in the same inning. Whether it was a 2-run homer or they laced together a few base hits. It's kind of what Kyle Bradish's MO was. But it was 1 inning, and then he's dominant the rest of the time. 9 strikeouts.
He did. That tied an Orioles record.
9 strikeouts out of 14 outs. That's incredible.
And that's not to say that my opinion on that is not to say that Kyle Bradish lost them the game. The Bats lost them the game.
The Bats lost them the game.
They did nothing
in games 1 and game 3. Yeah. Cedric Mullins ended the season on a 2 for 47 drought.
He was I don't know if it was 47, but it was up there. It was in the 40s.
Yeah, he came into that. I think it was 2 for 45.
Yeah.
He came into that game 2 for his last 41. And
dreadful series from Cedric Mullins.
Yeah, and then Ryan O'Hearn had 1 hit in the postseason.
Yeah.
Adley Rutschman had 1 hit in the postseason. Gunnar was the big game player that we expected him to be.
Sure.
And that's who he is.
That's who he is.
The rest of the offense let the team. And you know what? Hicks had a good series. Santander had a good series. In that first game, Santander,
carried
Hicks,
the team,
and Mountcastle were the only ones that had competitive bats.
Right.
They were the only ones.
That's it. By the way, on Ryan O'Hearn, I think it was game 2. He hit a ball that would have gone out in previous Camden Yards that really would have changed the game. I think it was early on. It was like the 3rd inning, and the Orioles weren't down big yet. It was before they got down big. And he hit a ball that he smoked it. It would have been gone in probably 29 other parks, but not in Oriole Park. And that kind of changed the game a little bit to me. Ryan O'Hearn hit the ball hard a few times.
Full disclosure here, I watched all of game 1, and I watched all of game 3. I was out in Pittsburgh. That's why I wasn't on the show last week. And we went to a Ravens-Steelers tailgate. And then afterwards, we went to this bar called Tequila Cowboy. And at no point did they have playoff baseball on. None of the games were on those TVs. It was all football. And I wasn't about to go leave my friends to go watch baseball by myself in the corner. So I didn't get to catch any of that baseball game. I had to follow it on Gamecast. And I saw in the second inning when Grayson gave up, 5 runs in the second inning. And that's when I tweeted out, "Do your effing job." Which I apologize for. I deleted a lot of tweets where I dropped F-bombs. Just kind of the environment.
You were getting spicy.
Yeah, the environment that I was in, the fact that we had been in tailgate all morning, I probably had no business tweeting, and I let my emotions get the best of me. I promise to never do that again. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about a really good Orioles season that had a really bad finish. Mike Elias had his end-of-season press conference the other day. Some takeaways. He said that he and Brandon Hyde, they were asking him, about the direction of the team and who's going to be running and all that, and he wouldn't comment on down the line, but he did say he and Brandon Hyde will be back next year. He wouldn't comment on payroll for next season because, in his words, it's day 1 of our off season. He said, "Can't wait to see Jackson Holliday in spring training." Says he will have a chance to make the club. He was asked about pitchers' innings limits this past year. He said the pitching staff banked a lot of experience this year, and they will be better off for it, which means there's going to be no restrictions on Bradish, Kramer, maybe Wells. I don't know. And Grayson Rodriguez.
Well, the role for Wells is still a question mark to me.
Yeah.
We don't know what that role is.
We don't know what the role is for Wells. We still don't know what the role is for DL Hall. He wouldn't comment on DL Hall either. Yes, he said he didn't want to talk about specifics regarding Wells and Hall as a starting pitcher or relief pitcher. He said they both had tough seasons. He lauded Tyler Wells for coming back up after his demotion and being nails for them down the stretch. Yeah. He lauded DL Hall for getting through injuries and being off-grid, in his words, in Florida, and then coming up at the exact time he was needed and being lights out.
I saw everything I needed to see from DL Hall in Game 1 to know that I actually finally believe that DL Hall is going to be an effective reliever.
I always believed he'd be an effective reliever.
You did. I was more skeptical.
I've also always believed he'd be an effective starter. I think that it would
be a disservice to DL Hall and the Orioles if they try him out as a starter again. He showed you everything he needs to show in Game 1.
Exactly, and in Game 3, for that matter.
Yeah.
And the thing with DL Hall, as much as I believe in him as a starting pitcher, at this point, there's no way that he could start the season as a start. You were looking at Tyler Wells all over again.
Right.
How many innings is he going to be able to give you before he starts to tire out and run out of gas? So I love DL Hall. If he's going to be a lockdown reliever, I still believe in him as a starter, but I don't think that the current team, as it stands, has time for that.
Yeah, I agree.
I
agree.
Like they just don't have time for that. So it's a situation
Not anymore.
Where if he had done this in 2022 and then they tried him out as a starter and he did what Tyler Wells did this year, okay, that's not what happened.
Right.
He's a year behind now, and they can't mortgage what they're doing to have him in their rotation, and they're not going to send him back down to AAA.
To me, they found the role for the guy. They found the role, and he could maybe even push to later innings. It doesn't have to be. I think he came in early. It was a playoff game, which doesn't really matter. It's that's different. Like, you're going to bring in Danny Coulomb early in playoff games too, even though he was the back of your bullpen technically. Yeah. if they can push him to the 8th inning and he can be that guy behind in front of Felix Bautista, and maybe Cano, I guess in 2024, that's great. I mean, if he can do what he did in both of those playoff games and just be locked down, be nails, as Brandon Hyde said about Tyler Wells, that's all you need DL Hall to be. That's the guy that you've been talking about for a long time. I finally believed it when I saw him pitch like that in Game 1 because I said, this guy's under all the pressure in the world, but he's a cool customer.
Mm-hmm.
He's a cool customer. Like, that's the way he is. Is
that a Bruce Springsteen song?
He's a cool customer.
Cool customer. Dead on.
You sound like you're in like a commercial when you do that.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're like a guy.
Icy hot.
Yeah, like
cool customer. Icy hot.
Should be like the new Shaq. But yeah, he's great under pressure. Clearly, that's his thing. He's a very, very cool under pressure guy, and that's going to be big for the Orioles.
Yeah, it's going to be huge for them. It's because he's got the confidence and he's got the talent and the elite stuff to do it, which is why I've always believed he'd be a legitimate starter, and I still think he could be. Like I said, I just don't think that that's a position that the Orioles are in to do that right now. You mentioned the wall. They asked Mike Elias. I didn't know about the shot that O'Hearn hit in Game 2.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they asked him. He said that the wall could be revisited with the new lease agreement to be more aesthetically pleasing, but he's happy to not have the most homer-friendly park in baseball anymore, and that the change worked. And it did. It did. It's
credit to you because you moved it. So
yeah, 100%.
Credit
100%. I did nothing to stop him, and therefore I am 100% responsible.
You are
for this. That is still so asinine to me. I couldn't remember who said it. I had to go and look at my list of people blocked on Twitter to find this guy. He hasn't posted since then. By the way, it's weird. Well, it makes me feel as though maybe he was a bit of a stalker.
Could be. He's probably upset that the Orioles are good. He doesn't want them to be good. I don't think he did.
No, probably because
I don't really think he wanted them to be good.
He's one of those fans who is more concerned about being right than whether or not him being wrong means that the team is good.
Correct. Yes.
By the way, I do want to tell you a little bit. So I'm not going to name the guy. There is a guy who follows me on Twitter. I had to mute him. He's nice enough, but he joined my baseball team in the fall. In the fall, this was like 4 or 5 years ago. In the fall, you kind of just sign up. You can he's signed up on our team. Like usually, you have to like talk with the manager first. But we needed players, so our manager didn't say anything about it. Just let him come play. The guy cannot play baseball, which is he's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But I had no idea who he was, and we're playing catch in the outfield in the first inning of our first game, and he's telling me my life story. He's telling me all this stuff about me, and I'm looking at him like, who the hell are you? Like, what
did he know specifically?
He knew who my girlfriend, who is now my wife, he knew who she was. He knew where I worked. He knew he knew about my shows. He knew a lot. He knew about my roommate and who one of her good friends were, because he was obsessed with that girl. The whole thing was so
weird.
The whole thing was really so strange to me, and it took me a little while before I realized who he was. And I'm like, did this guy like join this team because he knew I was on it?
That's really weird.
It was really weird.
Yeah,
really
that's
weird.
Bizarre.
Yeah,
I would be weirded out if that happened.
Dude,
no doubt.
I was. He was.
And he just randomly tells you this while you're playing catch.
We
it's
were
like,
playing catch. He just,
hey man, by the way,
he's just talking to me. He was asking me like, so how's someone, like he mentions my now wife's name.
Yeah.
He's like, so you live with such and such, my roommate at the time, and I'm just like, how do you know this?
Yeah.
This is a guy.
How's your buddy John doing? Like, how do you know that?
This is a guy. There's a baseball field that we play on that's right next to a main road up in Harford County, and there's no blocking you from the road. It's the road's up here, and then there's a hill down to the field. And there's people around, and there's children around, and in the middle of the game, he decides he has to go to the bathroom, like in between innings. And instead of like going where everybody else goes in the trees behind the fence, where nobody can see you, he stands right in front of the hill, facing the road, and just starts peeing with no coverage whatsoever. Everybody freaks out. We're like, "What are you doing?"
Man.
Just he's kind of an off the wall character.
Wow. Yeah. I would. That's the way I'd describe him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Completely off the. Now,
maybe he needs to get to know the wall guy. They probably get along well.
To be fair, I don't think he's a normal person. I think that there's something going on. up here.
Could be.
You know what I mean? But anyway, moving on.
Anyway.
That story went way longer than I intended it to. It just reminded me of the guy who blamed me for the wall being installed, pushed back, and not being torn down, and swears to the high heavens that the Orioles did it so that they could have a reason to leave.
Yeah.
So getting back to the season, it's hard to talk about how we feel about the season because 101 wins for this team is a remarkable accomplishment.
Remarkable.
And they are set up for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And you have to imagine, knock on wood, you have to imagine that this team's going to be even better next year. That might not translate to 101 wins because baseball's a finicky game. But you have to imagine that this team is going to be even better next year. Jackson Holliday should be here. We should get more exposure to Heston Kjerstad. Grayson Rodriguez and Kyle Bradish should be legitimate Cy Young candidates next year.
Sure.
So you have to imagine that this team's going to be better.
Yeah.
How do we grade this season? Because you still, even days removed now, and I was over it the next day. That's how I am with sports.
Same.
With sports, like when the Orioles lose, when the Ravens lose, it bothers me for that night.
Correct.
And then the next day, it happened.
I'm the exact same way.
Let's move on.
I think the only time that I didn't feel that way was when the Ravens went 14-2 and then lost to the Titans in the most devastating fashion ever. Like, they just got destroyed. And that's the way I feel that the Orioles did. Like, they got destroyed across the board for 3 games in a row. They had no chance. They weren't competitive, frankly. And what I take away from this is the same thing that I tried to take away from that Ravens game a few years ago. They're going to learn, and they're going to take a lot away from this. Guys like Grayson Rodriguez, guys like Dean Kramer, they're going to learn from their mistakes, their failures here. I think there's a lot you can take away. And as a manager, Brandon Hyde is not to blame for this at all. Not to blame. However, he didn't really manage a great series. So he's going to learn. The players are going to learn. There's a lot of young people on this team that are going to take away a lot of things from this. And that's a very positive takeaway.
I had 2 fears going into the playoffs, and they were 2 fears that began when I believed in June that the Orioles would make the playoffs. But when I believed that they could and would win the division was towards the end of July.
Yeah.
And but you knew at that point they're going to the playoffs, right? And I had 2 fears. One, all this talk about how they haven't been swept in 91 series, and it wasn't that number when I first started thinking about this. This is one of those things where it's like, oh, they haven't been swept in however many series, and they're going to get what if they get to the playoffs and they get swept in that first round? That was a thought that went through my head. And the second thought that went through my head was, and I said it on the show, Brandon Hyde does not have playoff experience.
Correct.
As a manager.
Yep.
And I am nervous that he is going to be overmatched.
Yep.
I don't, the word I used originally was exposed. And that's not fair. It's not fair to say somebody's exposed.
I agree.
But I felt like he was going to be overmatched, and to me, he was. You look at you take Bradish out, who's dominating.
Yeah. At that point, he had really found a rhythm, and he had given up two runs.
2 runs
with
9 strikeouts in 4 2/3. You got to get him through 6.
He was, I think, 83 pitches when he got pulled.
Yeah, it was 83 to 85. I think it was right in that realm, and he gets pulled. Which I get the big league managers do that, but how often have you? I mean, the Tampa Bay Rays lost the World Series because they pulled Blake Snell at like 60 pitches after 5 innings of like no hit ball. So there's that. You will never get me, and the writers can sit there and they can say Brandon Hyde pushed all the right buttons. I firmly disagree. Pinch hitting Adam Frazier for Jordan Westburg
in the 4th
inning with all the lefties in that Texas bullpen, to me, that was cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah.
That was an unnecessary move, and Adam Frazier had 0 competitive at-bats in that series. He grounds into a double play. He strikes out, he gets ahead in the count 2-0, and then swings at 3 straight balls to strike out.
Yeah.
Then he gets ahead, 3-1, swings at a pitch out of the strike zone and pops out to right field. To me, it was a knee-jerk reaction. Somebody used the term, he got into panic mode. I don't know that he got into panic mode, but
I would agree with that.
In the 4th inning, pinch hitting for Jordan Westbrook, that doesn't make it with a guy who's not as good a hitter.
And someone said in the comments, 3-2, how is that not a competitive game in game one? Well, it wasn't a competitive game because they couldn't hit. They had 5 hits the entire game, and 2 of them were by Santander, and then many of them came early in the game. After the 7th inning, they did nothing.
Yeah.
They did absolutely nothing.
Yeah, well,
so
and it's 3-2. Henderson walks to lead off the 9th. You will never convince me. You look at the comments.
I believe it was a base hit to lead off the 9th. I could be. I think that was his hit.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the only hit they got in the back half of the game.
It was a base hit. He gets on first base and he gets caught stealing, and he's thrown out by a wide margin, right? And when you show the replay of him stealing, he looked back at home twice.
Mm-hmm.
The comments that he said, where he said Brandon Hyde made that call, it was a miscommunication. It didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brandon Hyde said, that was my call. It was a miscommunication. It didn't work out. And then Aaron Hicks basically said, I have no comment.
Didn't like that from Aaron Hicks.
Yeah, because there's not a doubt in my mind that they put on a hit and run, and he didn't swing. He didn't swing. On a pitch that was in the strike zone that was called a ball.
It was undoubtedly a hit and run.
Yeah,
undoubtedly.
There is the way that Gunnar stole that, because he got a decent jump, and he was thrown out by so much, there's no doubt in my mind that it was a hit and run. And Hicks just didn't swing. In that situation, you've got to put the bat on the ball. Even if you just flick it foul, you live to fight another pitch. Yeah. And instead, you get your guy thrown out at second base, you end up not doing anything, and then the game's over.
Huge game changer. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
huge game changer.
That was a pivotal moment in the game and in the series. Yeah. And you find a way to win that ball game, game one, where their pitchers dominated you. I mean, that Texas bullpen is terrible, and game two, they gave up a good bit.
By the way, just to finish on the Aaron Hicks comment, this is a guy who's also played in like 38 postseason games in his career. Not a mistake he should have made. Yeah. Not a mistake he should have made at that point. Now, I understand, like, miscommunications happen, but you've been on this team long enough where that shouldn't happen. In my opinion, that's in a playoff game.
You've got to put, with the tying run on first base, and you know he's on the move, you've got to put the bat on the ball there.
Right.
You've got to put the bat on the ball.
Right.
And it would be one thing if Gunnar just got a bad jump, it was a straight steal, and he was out. It clearly was not a straight steal.
Right.
Clearly wasn't.
Right.
And then in game three, dude, they came out lifeless.
Yeah.
In game
completely
three.
Lifeless.
They came out lifeless. Now look, you're down 1-0 after the first inning. Okay, you're down 1-0, but then you're down 6-0 before you even get 6 outs. The team just it looked like they packed it in, and you hate to say that because chances are they were just pressing. They were just pressing,
Sure.
And Dean Kramer, with everything going on with Israel right now, he pitched for Team Israel. He is Jewish.
His parents live in Israel.
His parents live in Israel. A lot's on his mind.
Sure.
There were one of two things that could have happened. He goes out there and has a game of his life in honor of Israel, or he goes out there and he did what he did.
Yeah.
I could tell what Dean Kramer we were getting on the first batter. When he fell behind 3-1, the ball 3, when they put the camera on his face as he was getting the ball back from the catcher, and he looked disheveled.
Yeah.
He looked beside himself, upset that he was behind 3-1, and I knew right then and there, this isn't going to be good.
Yeah.
This isn't going to be good. And it wasn't. There's not really much to say about that game. The Orioles had one opportunity in the 8th inning. They pinch hit Aaron Hicks with the bases loaded. He grounded out weakly, and the game was essentially over at that point. Moving to the offseason, we've got some needs. We're not on the team. The team has some needs.
Yeah.
We're going to discuss that and more in our second hour with Luke Jackson, our Pressbox's senior editor. He's going to be coming in to sit in a studio, just like we did last year at the end of the year. He's going to sit in the entire 11 o'clock hour and talk all things Orioles with us as we approach the off season. In the meantime, Stan the Fan Charles will be joining us live here in just a moment. Just want to remind you, today's show is brought to you by the Tyus Bowser Show, which is back for Season 3. Tyus and his special guests will join Glenn and Rita all over town throughout the season, giving you the chance to get the inside scoop and rub elbows with your favorite players. The Tyus Bowser Show is a partnership of Pressbox and Great 8's memorabilia and is brought to you by Superbook Sports, AJ Michaels, and HelpMyGamblingProblem.org. For more information, visit PressBoxOnline.com/Bowser. Next Tyus Bowser Show is this Tuesday, October 17th at Mother's North Grill in Timonium. Be there. You do not want to miss it. And you do not want to miss this next segment as we are joined live by Stan the Fan. Charles, Stan, good morning. How are you?
Okay. How you guys doing?
Well, okay is the appropriate terminology. We are okay. Still getting over the sting of the Orioles' playoff performance, Stan. Orioles, they're swept in the American League Division Series after not being swept since May of 2022. In your expert opinion, Stan, what went wrong in that series that caused the Orioles to go home after 3 games?
Well, probably a combination of things. Overall, I would say that the sitting for 6-7 days was probably not beneficial to the Orioles. They probably would have been much better with a 2 or 3 day layoff. And I think they proved, the one thing I often talked about this second half of the season was how good they were, but how sort of I wondered about their hunger. And I think the club proved not to be as hungry for a championship as we thought they might be. And by hunger, I mean having some more veteran presence on the team, and having suffered through the sting of a loss like this was usually makes teams better. And I think when you look at the deficiencies on the roster, I think you have to give Mike Elias the benefit of the doubt that he didn't expect the Orioles to be a 100-win team this year and really be thrust into the limelight like that this year. I think they probably were timing things that the club would be much, much better in 2024 than it was in 2022. That I don't think, you don't go into a season with Brian Baker and some of the pieces that they have on this team, unless you really think you're ready for prime time.
And Stan, I didn't put this in the notes, and we haven't talked about it yet, but Brian Baker is a great place to start here. He got demoted after being ineffective at the big league level. He didn't do well in AAA, and then somehow finds himself on the Orioles playoff roster and comes in and gives up a big. It was a grand slam that he gave up when he came into the game out of the bullpen. After walking 3 guys,
he didn't give up the grand slam.
Oh,
he walked 3 batters. Webb gave up the grand slam.
That's right. It was Webb that gave up the grand slam, but Brian Baker came and walked 3 batters, gave up 3 runs.
He put the fire in motion.
Yeah, he absolutely did. It answers Billy Joel's question. That's who started the fire. Is Brian Baker. So Stan, why was he on the playoff roster to begin with? Is my question.
Well, they got thrown off late, with the Means' injury at the last minute, and they clearly, I think they still feel that Fujinami is an interesting piece to work with, and they control him for a couple more years. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I think they temporarily thought that trusting him wasn't the best option for the team.
Sure.
And they thought that Baker in short roles. One of the things Luke and I often talk about with Baker was if he came in with 2 or 3 days rest, he was pretty dominant. It was when he pitched often, back-to-back days, that his stuff played down quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they were planning not to use him a whole heck of a lot, and that, for 2 seasons he had been reasonably decent. Look, he wouldn't have been on my roster. I would have probably of the options at hand, I'm still a Cole Irvin guy.
That's
compared to what we had. I probably would have put Irvin on the roster. But again, when you're assembling a roster, you look at Texas's lineup, and it's got an awful lot of right-handed pop to it,
Yeah.
And probably they felt, you know what, Brian Baker can get right-handers out. We're running a risk with Cole Irvin. So I think the thing, rather than beat Mike Elias up about those decisions, is let's make better decisions during the off season where the roster is a little stronger Now, in fairness to Mike Elias, I don't think when March rolled around, I don't think he felt he would be getting nothing out of Michael Givens or nothing out of Dylan Tate.
Fair.
So there was an attempt, a small attempt, to fortify a bullpen that was very good in 2022.
Well, and so let's dive into that here a little bit with regards to the bullpen. Dylan Tate is still under team control, and to be perfectly honest, Stan, I have no idea what the deal is with Fujinami, because he signed a 1-year, $3.25 million deal as an international free agent with Oakland, which would lead me to believe that he would be a free agent at the end of this year. And that was my understanding. However, if you go to Baseball Reference or anywhere they can show you arbitration eligibility, it states that he's not arbitration eligible until 2026, not a free agent until 2029. But that means that the Orioles
We'll have to find out the real story there. But my feeling was he was a first-year rookie in Major League Baseball.
I don't know how that works, because it would drop his salary. They wouldn't have to pay him more than $740,000 next year in his as a pre-arbitration eligible player.
That's interesting. So we'll have to find out the true status of Shintaro Fujinami.
And I've been looking for it since they traded for him.
I read it that they had control over him. Look, I think he's a wild card one way or the other, if he's back with us. By the way, did either of you watch the Stanford Colorado game last night?
I did not. I read about it this morning.
I turned it off. It was 29-0 Colorado
in the third.
Right at halftime. At the half. Stanford came back with 46 points to beat them in double overtime, 46-43. I'm really pretty shocked by that.
They had a wide receiver who had 0 catches in the first half and 13 catches for 294 yards and 3 touchdowns in the second half. They blew their doors off in the second half.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But no. So,
anyway.
so with the Orioles, talking about their bullpen, Jacob Webb is still under team control. Dylan Tate's still under team control. Danny Coulombe's here. You're not going to have Felix Bautista next year. You're going to have Cano. And Cole Irvin is under team control. What are the Orioles going like? How do you see them approaching this offseason from a bullpen standpoint? Do you see them maybe trying to get somebody that can handle the back end in Felix? While Felix is recovering from Tommy John surgery, or do you think they go in-house?
Well, the options cropped up. I mean, the bullpen overall, the late inning bullpen wasn't what did the Orioles in.
Sure.
It was that middle stuff. Getting to the bridge people really screwed up mightily. From talking to me, we talk every week during the year, that I was a Tyler Wells bullpen guy.
Yep.
Okay. I thought that Tyler Wells was better suited to the bullpen because of issues relating to durability, not his quality of performance. I just thought he would break down, which he did. It's very interesting. Glenn and I had on John Smoltz yesterday, and he thinks Tyler Wells is a starter and they should not waste him in the bullpen, that he's a starter. So we'll see what way they're thinking. But to me, while I greatly respect John Smoltz a lot more because he actually did what I'm talking about, was convert late in his career to a bullpen guy to extend his career and was a top-notch closer. He knows a lot about pitching, and he thinks that Wells would be a waste as a late inning guy. But to me, it starts with Wells and Cano and DL Hall and possibly Fuji in there. Obviously, Coulombe is going to be on the team, an important part of the bullpen. Chanel Perez is there. I don't think you have to have one set closer. It's great to have somebody like Felix Bautista, but I don't know that you should be going out to chase somebody like that. But would I be interested in adding somebody like a Trevor May on a 1-year contract? Yeah. I think they need to fortify. They need that Brian Baker, Jake Webb duo needs to be better talent. Okay, and we'll hope that Dylan Tate is available. I have no idea, really. I can't even remember what his injury was and why they thought it was only going to be like, a month or two.
I think it was a flexor mass strain, right? With his elbow, a flexor mass strain, I believe.
Okay. I don't know much about coming back from that injury. I really don't. So I guess they can't count on him, but, they need to get better than Brian Baker and Jake Webb.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Stan, we'll talk more about this. We'll talk more about this roster here in just a minute. We did start off talking about how the Orioles had that 5-day layoff in between games, which probably hurt them more than it helped them. And you look at the top 5 records in baseball, Stan. The Braves at 104 wins, Orioles at 101, Dodgers 100. Rays at 99, and the Milwaukee Brewers at 92. Those 5 teams combined to go 1-13 in the playoffs. Orioles, Braves, and Dodgers all lost in the ALDS. The Rays and the Brewers were swept in the wild card series. There's a lot of people saying that they don't agree with this playoff format. Are you one of those people who thinks that these teams were hurt by the fact that they sat for 5 days?
I think baseball is a very different ball game. No pun intended. It's a different ball game. I do think that probably 5.5 days is probably a little too much, but I really haven't thought this through how I'd like to see it reshaped. I think John Smoltz thinks maybe it's turning this division round into a 7-game series. To give the teams a little bit better chance. The better teams a little bit more bang for their buck of having finished way in front of, we're talking in the case of the Phillies and the Diamondbacks, the Phillies were 14 games behind the Braves.
Yep.
And the Diamondbacks were probably 16 games behind the Dodgers.
Yep.
I think the scale should be weighted a little bit more toward the teams that are better.
Yeah. There's only two ways that you could really, 3, I guess. You'd either have to expand to 8 teams, which is ridiculous for the playoffs, or you go back to a one wild card game to give, and then
I'm not in favor of the one.
Neither am I.
Like the one wild card. Yeah.
It doesn't feel like the playoffs. Doesn't feel like the playoffs.
It's very hard to sell to fans and teams that you can go 162 games and then lose in one game. That doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. Yeah. But I think that maybe going to a 7-game series or the division series is the best option that they have, because I was talking.
And maybe you wait the home team in those 7-game series. Maybe the better team gets the first 3 games, then it's 2-2. So there's something you win for being the best record in baseball. And John Smoltz did allude to the fact that it'll be much better when we have 32 teams rather than 30. That eventually it'll be more teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, and if they do that, if they do expand to 8 teams in the playoffs, then you don't really have a need to have anybody have a bye. Everybody just plays.
Right.
Which I think would be the best solution. But you got to get more teams in the league before you can put more teams in the playoffs. Yeah. For me, I never really thought about the format because at the end of the day, you just have to go out there and play baseball. But having that 5-day layoff and seeing what it's done to the best teams in the league the last 2 years since they changed the format, you can't ignore it.
And it's 2 years. Yeah, it's 2 years. I don't know that they'll knee-jerk and change it next year, but I think if there was a repeat of this, I think you'd see substantial changes by 26, 25.
Do you think it de-incentivizes?
They might, by that time, they may know where they're going to go with expansion.
Yeah, they very well could. Now, Stan, do you think it de-incentivizes teams to try to win their division? Because if you win the top wild card spot, the top 2 wild card spots, you have a home game. For 3, you have 3 straight home games. If you're the top seed in the wild card, you have 3 straight home games like the Phillies had, and then you can keep rolling. You can take that momentum and take it into the next series. My stepdad is a huge Philadelphia Phillies fan. He's saying he's glad they didn't win the division because they got to play all their games at home and they got to get hot.
Right. it's a tricky thing. You start trying to thread that needle of not winning the division, and be cute about it. What would you do? Use Brian Baker as a starter in a big game or something? I mean,
Yeah.
not to puncture him again. That's not really what you want.
No, you want them to try.
I think you want to have incentive. And one of the other things they could do right now is reseed the teams, so you have different matchups in the earlier round, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Would probably help a little bit.
I think reseeding would be smart, too. I think that seeing the two teams with the two best records playing in the ALDS or the NLDS probably shouldn't happen. They should probably be the two teams playing to go to the World Series. So I would agree with reseeding as well. In other sports, I think hockey does that, too. Don't they reseed?
I think they started reseeding in hockey a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's smart. Now, Stan,
in hockey doesn't every team make the playoffs?
It seems that way. It seems that way. Yeah, them and the NBA.
Except the Caps this year.
Yeah,
they're not going to be very good.
And there are regular season awards in hockey, which is something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So, Stan, we're still a few weeks away from the start of the offseason and the start of free agency. In Mike Elias' press conference the other day, he was very careful to not make any polarizing statements such as lift off from here. He said it was the first day of the offseason, so we wouldn't comment on any potential moves. We talked about the bullpen. What other moves does this team need to make, and do you anticipate a far more active and flashier offseason than what we saw last year?
I would expect that the team will – I think the team will look around for the right starting pitcher if that person exists. I think they've got – and I asked the question at the press conference that, I said, Brandon, we haven't really had an ace on this pitching staff. And I said, with all due respect to Chris Tillman, who was very good, he was a really solid number 2 starter. Mm-hmm. I said, we haven't had a real number 1 since Mussina, left the team in 2000, after the 2000 season. I said, are we there yet with Bradish? And he was very thoughtful in his answer, and he said he can be, and he also gave the possibility that in his estimation, Grayson can be a one type of pitcher. He said, but they're not there yet. So if your manager thinks that, you got to think that while Brandon is very careful never to cross that line to start talking about who we should get publicly, to put pressure on his general manager. When there's meetings, there's going to be talk about who could we get that's like the equivalent, and it's ironic I'm using his name, like a Charlie Morton, somebody that, and I'm not willing to, I'm not sure the Orioles are willing to pay $20 million for 1 year at a time of a pitcher right now. Mm-hmm. But they might be, if the right guy is out there. I look around at potential free agents. I wonder, would you be interested in Clayton Kershaw? That was 1 year.
That was the first name.
$22 million.
That was the first name that came to my. That was the first name that came to my mind while you were just before you even asked me. Is Clayton Kershaw? I would 100% be interested in it. My one problem there is I don't think if he's not pitching in Texas or LA, I don't think he's pitching anywhere.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
That's.
But I would take him in a heartbeat.
Absolutely, I would take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah. I think if he looks around at what's going on in Baltimore and the stadium, that there might be some interest. Again, he's not the only guy. There'll be a half a dozen of the guys that we're kind of talking about.
Sure.
One of the guys last year I would have really been interested in was Nathan Eovaldi.
Me too. That's who I wanted to.
Was really, yeah. But we'll take a look at all the free agents. I gave a glance. The one pitcher that jumped up to me, and I'd be curious. I did this on the show yesterday, and Glenn guessed $10 million. What do you think Kenta Maeda makes a year?
Kenta Maeda?
Probably more than that.
I think he probably makes.
I'll go like 17 million.
I'll go 14, 15 million a year.
Okay. How about if I told you these last 6 years? Now I don't remember what kind of contract he signed. He's making $3.2 million a year.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Look it up on
he's underpaid then.
Yeah,
he's underpaid.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
He's underpaid. Now he's 35 now, 36. But boy, wouldn't he be a perfect sixth starter if Means really can't go to the post, or do what he did a lot of times with Minnesota this year, be sort of that swing man that really can come in and get you three innings in a game where your starter's not very good. Pitch 140 innings rather than 180, and maybe you get him like on a 3-year, $27 million contract at the age he's at. You insure him a good chunk of money, but you try and hit him with a low annual figure.
Yeah.
So he's one player that immediately caught my eye. I'm sure Minnesota will make an effort to sign him, but it's hard for a team like Minnesota to say, "Hey, we'll go to pay him $10 or $12 million" when they're in a very similar situation. The Orioles, they're going to have guys making more money, next year that they have to pay.
Yeah.
So he was a name that jumped out at me because I think his quality of performance is pretty darn good. If you look at his second half when he got back from the injury, he had one bad start, and his other 9 or 10 appearances, I think his ERA was in the mid-2s.
Wow.
So he's somebody I look at. CBS listed the top 25 free agents, and even though there's an option there at $13.4 million for Justin Turner in Boston, they have him listed as a free agent. I'd still be very interested in Justin Turner.
And that brings me to the next point. I was looking at Justin Turner too. Last year we wanted my two biggest needs for the Orioles was a legitimate veteran middle of the order bat and a legitimate starting pitcher. I wanted somebody like a Nathan Eovaldi or a Chris Bassett, and I wanted J.D. Martinez. Instead, we got Kyle Gibson and we got Adam Frazier. J.D. Martinez for $11 million this past season hit 33 homers and drove in 103 for the Dodgers. And I think he would have fit perfectly into the Orioles' middle of the order. Do they need to go out and get that middle of the order veteran presence that actually imposes fear on the opposing pitcher? Because right now, I think Gunner's the only guy that does that in this lineup.
Yeah, it's not so much that he imposes fear. I wondered about this team when I said how hungry they were. Who was the real leader on this team? I know everybody says Adley is, and it's clear that Gunner's going to be an alpha dog.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about that. But who was the guy that was sort of like what Frank Robinson was to the 66 Orioles, what Nelson Cruz was to the 2014 Orioles? The guy that's been there, who's been tested. None of our guys have been tested, playoff tested.
Maybe you can make the argument for Aaron Hicks, but he ain't that guy.
That's what I was going to say. Aaron Hicks played in like 38 playoff games for the Yankees, but he's not that guy.
He's not that guy.
He's not that guy. And Hicks was a very good acquisition by Elias. When you compare what it looks like Kjerstad, Cowser would have done the second, or McKenna would have done this, the second half of the year when we picked up Hicks.
Mm-hmm.
Hicks turned out to be pretty good. I'm kind of thinking he's going to try and parlay this into making some decent money on like a 2-year contract.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm giving him, $7 million a year or something like that for 2 years. Too much injury risk with him. So I look around, and those were the two names that jumped out at me as guys that could help the team. I just love Justin Turner, what he could bring to the team.
Me too.
And Stan, just to add to your point earlier, do you think O'Hearn's that guy? If Hicks isn't the guy, maybe it's O'Hearn. But then again, he didn't really show up in the playoffs either.
I'm not worried about O'Hearn, whether he showed up in the playoffs. I think we saw the regression to the mean, although it came at the worst possible time. The last 50 at bats of his season. I expect him to be back, but he's not a guy that I've got down in my mind as a difference maker. I know I've told you the story many, many times about a guy like Jim Dwyer on the Orioles back in the mid-'80s, and everybody would always clamor, why doesn't he play Jim Dwyer more. Look at how he hits when he gets in as a pinch hitter or a once in a while start. And all of a sudden you get an injury and Jim Dwyer plays for 3 weeks. And after 8 days, he didn't do anything because he was Jim Dwyer. He wasn't meant to be an everyday player, you know. And my fear is that we got the best of Ryan O'Hearn, and I'm not saying that disqualifies him from being back on the team because he's certainly an inexpensive piece, and I'm not saying he's a piece of nothing, you know. But I don't think I want to count on him, you know, over a tried and true guy like a Turner, even though he's 38 years old, or J.D. Martinez, that really put up numbers, you know, for the long haul of their careers.
Well, yeah,
I think they need a guy like that. And when you start asking me who would probably go, I would probably put a package together, even though we loved the way he came back from his vertigo. The Ryan Mountcastle that I always see is the Ryan Mountcastle I saw in the postseason, just striking out when the going gets tough. And veteran pitchers kind of toy with him, in my estimation. I think he's too easy an out for my lineup for a productive person, you know, where you need a productive person.
Yeah.
So I'd be more inclined to be playing Santander at first, you know, or Kerstad at first, see what they can do, and bring in this veteran type of bat. You know, you can't just acquire a veteran guy that you're going to pay 10 or 12, $14 million and then just go, now where are we going to play him? You got to think about it. So the sequence to me is open up a slot for somebody for Mountcastle. And Mountcastle will probably retrieve a good chunk of value if he's thrown together with a trade with a prospect or two involved. You might be able to get that pitcher we're talking about or that offensive player that we're talking about.
Yeah. You might be, and you know, I don't hate the idea of Mountcastle still being here. If he's hitting lower in the order, I hate the idea of him batting fourth for the Orioles.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. If he's here, he's like a 7 hitter.
Right, I can live with that.
It still means you got to get better somewhere. You know.
Right now, do you think?
I don't know where that hole is. You know, and I do want to mention this because I know we're probably running up on time. I did ask Hyde a question, which I thought was a little bit of a curveball. I said, you know, most managers in baseball, when you made the decision to kind of move on from Mateo as your shortstop and started playing Gunnar more over there, I said an awful lot of managers, and I really meant fans, were of the opinion that, okay, release Mateo, he's no good, you know. I said, you kind of took the other approach. You kept him alive, you know, and saw a role for him and a value. Do you still see that? And he spoke glowingly of Mateo. And his view of his defense, which I think we'd all agree, took a step back. He even brought up what I've been saying, unsolicited by me. He just said, I think some of his lack of sharpness was his dropping from being a day-to-day player to playing, you know, more like 2-3 times a week. He just wasn't as sharp. And I think there are things you can do to work on him being sharper that way, you know.
No, I agree. And I think that there is a place for a guy like Jorge Mateo on any team, but you have to go into the season with the mindset that he's not a guy who starts 4 or 5 times a week. He's a guy who's a late-inning defensive replacement and a pinch runner for you who gets a spot start here.
Mostly it's the pinch running thing that he can do. And also, he did show this year, against left-handers, he did hit very well.
Yeah,
you know.
He did.
I don't know the exact numbers, but Brandon mentioned it too. He said he really, you know, and I'm not saying he plays every time a left-hander plays, and he doesn't play over Gunnar Henderson. He plays with him. But I was glad that they still see value in him. You know, and a team that's going to suddenly be bursting at the seams with arbitration players moving up, and you're deciding, do we keep Hayes, do we keep Mullins, do we keep Santander? Having a guy like him who's going to probably make like $5 million next year rather than than 12 or 14. It makes it an easier decision to make.
His numbers were staggeringly better versus left-handed pitching this year. He slashed 276, 329, 417, 746 against left-handed pitching this year. All of them almost 100 points higher than every other category versus right-handed pitching. He was significantly better.
I know they dropped that experiment real quick with him in the outfield when he made that one horrible play.
Yeah.
But he also made one play that same game that no other outfielder would have probably gotten to.
Yeah, I think that he can be a jack of all trades if they go into the season with that mindset instead of having to do it on the fly. And before we let you go, Stan, you mentioned arbitration. Anthony Santander is due to get a raise to over $12.5 million this year through arbitration. Is that a guy that you think that the Orioles are going to keep around and pay? Is he an extension candidate, or do you think he's now more than ever a trade candidate when you consider the fact that they've got Kjerstad and Kauser coming through the wings?
I think he's a little bit of all of the above. I mean, I would think that it would be pretty risky to just move on from him this year because he's going to make 12. Mm-hmm. To me, where you might want to move on from him is if he ends up earning where he's a 17 to 19 million dollar player. That would mean he'd have an incredibly big season next year. A 30 home run, 90-plus RBI season, and a 325, 330 on base percentage. But again, I really like Santander, and he became much more than I thought he would be after like his second year when his on base percentage was roughly 290 to 295. Mm-hmm. He's really worked hard at understanding what he has to do. And I'm not saying he's going to ever be what Justin Turner or JD are in terms of on-base percentage. That's too big a climb for him, in my opinion. But I think he can be a steady contributor, and I love his presence in the clubhouse.
He seems like a great guy, Now, I will tell you, Stan, before we let you go, that the season you just described for Santander is the season he's coming off of. 28 homers, 95 RBIs, and a 325 on-base percentage. He had that year this year, and basically last year I think his on-base percentage was like 318, but the homers and RBIs were there again last year also. He might be that player after this coming season, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, look, and that's why I say they will certainly weigh carefully what they want to do with Santander. It's not an automatic; he'll be back, but I also don't think $12 million is a bank breaker.
They've got to be past that point where $12.5 million makes them bat an eye and do something, and they've got to be past that point at this point with this franchise. Stan, what do you got coming up this week?
Got a discussion with Ross and Luke. We'll take a look at where the playoffs stand on Monday at about 4:15, and then I'm taping another interview with a rider that will be taking part. His name is Buck Davidson, not Buck Showalter. Buck Davidson, who will ride in the Maryland 5-Star.
Oh, excellent. Well, we will look forward to that.
I just want to throw out one other thing again. If you sign up at superbook.com, superbooksports.com, use the promo code StanCharles23, or if you like Glenn better than me, use Glenn Clark23, and you get a $250 first bet bonus, win or lose, from Superbook Sports by using the promo code StanCharles23.
Oh, that's awesome. We'll be sure to plug that for you for sure throughout the show. Stan, thank you so much. We will talk to you next week, all right?
Guys. All right. The sun comes out tomorrow.
Hopefully. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye. Now is Stan the Fan Charles, who continues his weekly baseball shows throughout the playoffs and off-season. Every Monday night, Stan is joined by former Orioles pitcher Ross Grimsley and Pressbox's managing editor Luke Jackson to break down the latest with the Birds. Every Thursday night, Stan and Gary Stein will chat with a different newsmaker from the world of sports. Every Saturday, Stan's on our show from 10:25 to just about 11. And this week, Stan and Gary caught up with Maryland 5-star cross-country course builder Tyson Rementer. You can find the shows live at facebook.com/Pressbox or find them the next day at PressboxOnline.com/video and YouTube.com/PressboxOnline. We got to get a break. When we come back in, maybe a little bit of Orioles banter, maybe a little bit of sounding off, and then Luke Jackson, our senior editor over here at Pressbox, he'll join us for the second hour. That's next on the Bat Around.
Why bet with the big boys this football season? Instead, try your hand with the local book, Superbook Sports, this fall. Superbook Sports is the book next door. Just a dedicated team of the best odds makers in Las Vegas, making sure you get the best prices and parlays anywhere. And now, Superbook will give you a bonus of up to $250 when you sign up and wager on the same day and use the promo code PRESSBOX23. So bet with the best and use promo code PRESSBOX23 this football season with Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
What's up, everyone? It's Tyus Bowser, and I've had so much fun hanging out with Rita and putting up with Glenn the last couple years that I've decided to do it again. Season 3 of the Tyus Bowser Show is happening this year, as we'll be all over town, giving you the chance to get to know me and some of my teammates. As we talk football, life in general, and just say what needs to be said. You can find out more about the show by going to PressboxOnline.com/Bowser. If you don't live in the area, you can watch the shows live on Facebook and YouTube. And if you miss one, you can listen Friday nights at 105.7 The Fan. So we'll see you all season long for the Tyus Bowser Show, a partnership of Pressbox and Great Ace Memorabilia.
The next Tyus Bowser Show is Tuesday, October 17th at Mother's North Grill in Timonium. It's brought to you by Superbook Sports and AJ Michaels, and if you or a loved one have a gambling problem, visit helpmygamblingproblem.org.
6 chicken tenders made from fresh, never frozen Royal Farms world-famous chicken, a family-sized order of Western fries, honey mustard dipping sauce, and a 2-liter bottle of Dr. Pepper. It's Royal Farms' new Tucker's Tenders Meal. It's Justin Tucker's favorite, and at only $19.99, it'll be your favorite meal, too. The new Tucker's Tenders Meal, available only at Royal Farms. Now you can kick back, relax, and eat like a champion. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
Visit Harford County this fall. Celebrate arts across Harford September 15th through the 30th with dance, theater, music, and visual arts. September 29th through October 1st is the largest Italian festival in Maryland, featuring entertainment, cooking demonstrations, a bocce tournament, and family fun. If you're headed to the Maryland 5-Star, stay and play in Harford County. While you're there, enjoy the scenic views atop the King and Queen seats and experience pumpkin patches, corn mazes, and fall brews along their Harford Libation Trail. For more info, head to visitharford.com. Maryland open.
Picking a restaurant to try for the first time? Let's look at the Costas Inn. Here's a few checklist items. Quality of the food? Check. Quality of service? Check. Does restaurant have plenty of free parking? Check. And finally, does restaurant have delicious steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, and specials galore? Check, check, check. Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. They check all the boxes.
The Baltimore County Police Department is now hiring with competitive salaries, including for experienced police officers, starting salaries between over $68,000 and over $82,000 based on your prior service time, accepting up to 7 years of service times with only 6 weeks in the academy, minimum of 2 years prior experience. And police cadet starting salaries at over $32,000 must be between the ages of 18 and 20, but you can apply starting at 17 and a half. Must have a high school diploma or GED equivalent at the time of the hire, U.S. citizen at the time of the hire, and a valid driver's license. So if you have a passion for service and want a career for life, now is the time to join the Baltimore County Police Department. Call 410-887-5542 or visit joinbaltimorecountypd.com.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis, ajmichaels.com.
And we're back. Welcome back to that was an old Jimmy Fallon skit from SNL.
I love Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, if you go watch the best of Jimmy Fallon, I think they have 2 of them. The first one's really good. The second one, the same thing with Will Ferrell. The first ones are really good. The second one's not. So
I love the classic Christmas skit where he does it with Tracy Morgan and they're.
Oh,
I wish it was
they're
Christmas
dancing.
today. Yeah,
They're dancing.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
That's very funny, and with Horatio Sands too.
Yeah.
Today's show. Welcome back to the Bat Around. Bat Around today brought to you by your local Toyota dealer. The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, and you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today. I want to address something. We are very happy with the way that the Orioles season went as far as winning 101 games, winning your division, announcing your presence with authority, and making everybody realize that good baseball is back in Baltimore for the long haul.
Undoubtedly.
We think. We are very excited about that. We have every right to not be excited about how they played in the postseason.
Yeah.
They crapped the bed.
It's fair criticism. It's fair.
I'm not going to come in here, and if you follow me on Twitter, I'm not all rainbows and sunshine about this team.
You were definitely not.
Now, I'm not nearly as negative as people think I am, and I was far more positive this year than I was last year. And I let Brandon. I gave Brandon Hyde a fair shake this season, and I agree he should win Manager of the Year.
Absolutely.
Right? That does not mean that he is immune to criticism.
Right.
In the postseason, he made some poor moves in the postseason.
Undoubtedly.
Did he lose the game for his team? Probably not.
No.
Probably not. But we can take the probably out of that. He didn't lose games for his team. He didn't help them win games either, in my opinion. And that's fair. He's never been there before.
Yeah.
To expect Brandon Hyde to come in there and teach a master class on managing in his first postseason ever, you think those guys are nervous? He's just as nervous.
Those weren't the expectations.
Right.
Those weren't. I mean, we didn't put that out there.
You've got to be realistic about this. And you also have to be realistic about the fact that Brandon Hyde is in a position that few other managers are ever allowed to be in.
Yeah.
He was a manager that was brought in to oversee a rebuild, and he got to stick around to reap the fruits of his labor.
Right.
He's in a position that other managers, they aren't given that opportunity.
Right.
So to think that, he's going to come out there and be Manager of the Year Brandon Hyde in the playoffs, probably unrealistic. And to think that he's not going to learn from this just like the players are and get better next year, that would be unrealistic too.
The fact that Brandon Hyde is going to win Manager of the Year is a completely separate fact from what he did in the playoffs and the way he managed. It's completely separate. And frankly, the 100-win season is separate from that too. We are thrilled, beyond thrilled in ball. Everyone is. I mean, how could you not be? With 101 wins, playoff baseball is back in ball. We're thrilled with it. We're still happy. I'm sitting here very happy about that. But the fact is that we're just trying to factually cover what happened in the playoffs.
Yep.
And what factually happened in the playoffs is they got beat badly.
Yeah, they were outmatched and they were outcoached.
Yeah.
And Bruce Bochy he's a potential Hall of Fame manager for a reason.
And maybe Ryan and I should have delved into that a little more last week with Bruce Bochy versus Brandon Hyde. We didn't really get into that, but it's a great point. Bruce Bochy has won World Series before. He's done this.
Yeah.
The guy has managed in probably, 30 postseason games at least, at the minimum. The guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he outmanaged Brandon Hyde. And that's not crazy to say. That's not unexpected either.
It's not crazy to say, and it doesn't mean that we don't respect the job that's been done.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that we're doom and gloom here. The fact of the matter is we're sitting here on a dreary, cold, rainy Saturday morning where we expected the Orioles to be preparing for the ALCS, and instead they're already back to where they came from.
Right.
And that's the fact of the matter. Glenn Clark posted this the other night. Does your how do you compare your disappointment for the way this season ended to your hope for the future? And my hope for the future far outweighs any disappointment for what happened in the playoffs for the Orioles. I'll tell you right now, like I said to Zach at the beginning of the show, I got over the playoff loss by the next morning. I don't let this stuff linger. There are very few sporting events in my entire life that I have let linger.
I'm with you.
The 1997 ALCS still cuts me to my core. That 1997 ALCS, in fact, the Mike Mussina in 2 starts through 15 innings, struck out 25 and gave up 1 run, and they lost both of those games. I will never get over that.
Yeah, fair enough.
And by the way, Omar Vizquel fouled that bunt off. It was not a wild pitch. It was a foul ball. You go back and watch that tape 100 times. If you don't think that it was a foul ball, you're a Cleveland Indians fan. All right?
Yeah.
I'll never get over that. I also, the only reason I was able to get over it was because they won the Super Bowl the next year. The Billy Cundiff miss and the Lee Evans drop.
AJ just said that
in the AFC Championship game.
That one stunk for a while.
That was the only sporting event in my entire life where I actually almost threw up. I was forced. I agree with that. I was forced to work on my day off at a restaurant. Because I just started there, I was supposed to have the day off, and the guy who was training me was supposed to be working, and he ended up leaving, not working, to go watch that game with friends. So they forced me to work for him, which I had no choice in the matter. So I'm standing in an empty restaurant. It was Ruth's Chris down in the city. I'm standing in an empty restaurant, watching that entire AFC game. I had one table that entire day, and they tipped me $5 on a $100 check.
Geez.
By the way. And I watched him miss that kick, and I went into the kitchen, and I had to, crouch down and catch my breath. I almost threw up. I almost threw up. Those are, the two things in Baltimore sports history that lingered. This loss, I didn't think I hate to say it out loud, but I didn't think the Orioles were going to the World Series this year. They're young, they're inexperienced, and I knew that their pitching, as good as I believe their pitching can be, I didn't think that they had enough experience yet to make that run.
Agreed.
But to say that we shouldn't criticize a team or that we should be all rainbows and butterflies about this team, we're very, very excited for the future.
Extremely.
Doesn't negate the fact that they played piss-poor baseball in the postseason. And with that, we want to welcome in. This guy never has piss-poor performances. He is our senior editor for Pressbox. He is Luke Jackson.
Senior. That's the first time I've been called a senior editor.
Senior.
I like that better than managing
I thought that
editor.
was your title. Did I get that wrong?
No, I like that better. No, technically it's managing editor, but I like senior.
Managing
editor. I didn't put that in the description.
Ooh, I like that too.
Senior managing editor.
You got to ask Stan for a new title, I think. It's got to change it up.
Ask the senior for the senior title.
Right, there you go.
Oh, man, was that rude? I didn't mean that.
Probably.
It was just a joke.
No. So my biggest gut punch loss, freshman at Maryland, the Corey Lucius game. Probably in the moment. That or the Billy Cundiff game, which really was the Lee Evans game for me.
Yeah.
But that Maryland team, my freshman year, 09-10, was going to the Final Four. And they were going to play Duke in the Final Four. And I was too young, really, to have too much awareness of the Final Four loss to Duke.
Mm-hmm.
But I know you were talking about Baltimore sports history, but
Maryland
I'm
counts.
cheating a little bit here. But the Corey Lucius game, that was because, Gary was still going strong, and I was so into that team because I was at Maryland. I was at every game, the whole 9 yards, and they had come back from down 10 or 12, with I think it was in the final TV timeout segment, and Gravis played his best basketball of his entire career to get Maryland in a position to win that game, and that was it was devastating. It was absolutely devastating, and it really caused a little bit of a ripple effect about the future of the program, because if they go to the Final Four, I wonder if Gary just goes out on a high note and maybe they get a better coach coming off of a Final Four, a better coach than Turgeon. So so that was that for me in the moment. I just remember sinking to the ground when that ball went in.
Now you're gonna have to forgive me for this, Corey Lucius. I'm not familiar with the name, and I probably should.
Michigan State.
I was gonna say, was this a Michigan State buzzer beater game?
And he was kicked off of the team for something. He did something stupid. He got kicked off the team a year later.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. That
and there was the play was impossible. I think it was Draymond Green was on that team, and it was a pass to Draymond. And he ducked out of the way of the pass so it could go to Corey. When the guy ducked, when does that ever happen?
Right.
Anyway, so that's
I remember my dad and I had plans to play golf that day before we knew that Maryland was in that position. So we were paying attention to the game on my phone. Looking at the game cast, and I'm watching the Maryland's winning, and then I see that Michigan State hit a buzzer beater. And I was on the golf course, not watching, just watching the game cast, and my heart sank. Mm-hmm. For me, with regards to Maryland, it was the 2000-2001 team that was in the Final Four against Duke.
Yep.
And they were up 22 at halftime.
Yep.
And they lost by 11.
How old were you?
I was a junior in high school.
Okay, so you were, I was not, really, I don't know if I was watching. I was 9 or 10 years old at the time. So but I was very aware of like the title run the next year. So very similar to the Billy Cundiff game.
Yeah.
They bounced back and used that as motivation, I guess.
For me, with the Maryland game, when they lost that Final Four game to Duke, it sucked. I watched that game by myself at my dad's house because I was waiting for everybody was out doing something. I was a kid. I had just gotten to my dad's house and nobody was home yet, so I'm watching it by myself. And I remember thinking, this really sucks. They were up by 22 at halftime. How do you 33-point swing in the second half? And then I thought to myself, they're going to be back next year. There was not a doubt in my mind that they were going to be back next year, so it took some of that sting away. It was the same thing with the Ravens. That loss sucked. I felt physically ill because of it. And then I saw Ray Lewis's locker room speech, and I thought to myself, it was incredible. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I sat there and I thought to myself, this team's winning the Super Bowl next year. There wasn't a doubt in my mind.
And it's funny because the 11 team was a lot better for me than the 12 team. The 12 team got hot, but I thought the 11 team was the most complete team. No.
2010 and 2011.
Either the first or second most complete team of the Harbaugh era, with the other one being 2019, which was a devastating loss for a whole nother reason.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like a gut punch moment in the game, but
it was the same thing that plagued them this past Sunday.
It was just they've been chasing that ever since. That when you think about the Lamar Jackson era, you think about the missed opportunity with the Tennessee game.
Yep.
That's what you really think about in terms of postseason. That they had it all lined up that year, and statistically the best team of the Harbaugh era, probably statistically the best Ravens team ever in the regular season, certainly the best offensive team, and they just played like poop.
Yeah, it was just like last Sunday. They dropped 7 passes in that game.
Yeah,
and, the first one was the Mark Andrews tip that went for an interception when they were driving on their very first drive of the game. If the Ravens don't turn the ball over there, if Andrews comes down with that ball, they probably score touchdowns.
At least get 3.
Yeah, and then you also think about the fact Seth Roberts would have had a 60-yard touchdown right through his breadbasket.
Right.
And then you think about the catch that Marquise Brown did make, where he caught it between like 8 guys with one hand.
Best catch of his Ravens career.
Yeah, and you're like, how does he catch that? And Seth Roberts drops that.
And they don't punch it in.
Yeah.
And so I think, I forget what the score was, but they needed to punch that in. They didn't. And
they lost by 2 scores.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, oh, Lamar sucks. Put up 508 yards of total offense by himself.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of the best performances of his entire career. And his receivers let him down. Same thing that happened last Sunday. He was the highest graded position player in all of football last week. And they lost a game because his receivers dropped 7 passes, including 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, that Titans loss in 19 was just something else. So everyone expected them to win the Super Bowl. Like, there was nobody who didn't think they were going to win the Super Bowl that year. They were just unbelievable across the board. I've never felt the city like that either. I thought Baltimore City that year felt different to me than almost any other Ravens year.
You don't recall 2006?
Yeah, before my time.
Before
my time.
2006,
that's a good one.
In my opinion, is the greatest Ravens team to ever set foot on the field.
I disagree.
That team, that defense scored like 9 touchdowns. They were stupid good. The offense wasn't spectacular, but they were everything that they needed to be, and Steve McNair was everything that they needed in a quarterback for that season. That team was 13-3. They should have gone to the Super Bowl. They held the Peyton Manning team where he threw 50 freaking touchdowns that year. They held that team. Peyton Manning Colts. His best season before ever, but aside from the second to last year with Denver, they held that team to 5 field goals.
Yeah.
In the divisional round of the playoffs, they held that team to 5 field goals, and they lost that game 15-6.
That was a gut punch loss. That's a good one. Also, the Raul Ibanez game in the Bronx. That's.
I don't remember that one too well either.
That for me is maybe
Nate McLeoth hit the foul pole.
The toughest loss.
Nate McLeoth did hit the foul pole.
As an Orioles fan, was that Raul Ibanez game, because that was a very in terms of the Yankees teams of that era, that was a pretty meh Yankees team. That was a beatable Yankees team. And
CC Sabathia started that game, correct?
No, he started games 1 and 5.
Oh, okay.
And he was the reason why they won that series.
Got it.
They had CC Sabathia and the Orioles didn't.
Ibanez, the Ibanez home run wasn't...
He pinch hit for A-Rod.
Yeah. The Ibanez home run wasn't the Game 5 loss.
It wasn't the game. Okay.
It was the Game 3 loss where the Orioles would have gone up 2-1, and they ended up winning Game 4. And this was a year when they tried a 2-3 format, so which I actually thought was an advantage, more of an advantage than 2-2-1, where the lower seed hosted the first 2 games, and I'm guessing this was to try to eliminate an off day to move along the playoffs or whatever, and then the higher seed hosted the last 3 games. Mm-hmm. So
okay.
If you were, so it was a big advantage, I thought, for the higher seed, that if the higher seed could just take one of those first 2 games, they're sitting pretty.
Yeah, and they won the first game. I was at that game.
Yeah, it was. That was another Jim Johnson game where he gave up a bunch of runs.
They scored like 7 runs in the 9th inning.
Yeah,
it was bad.
Yeah, it was not great.
Yeah.
But I will say that I was also there for the next game, the first playoff win at Camden Yards in how many ever years it was. Delman Young, that moment was very loud. Just as loud for me was when Jim Johnson struck out A-Rod for that Game 2 win.
Yep.
For me.
Yeah, I mean that crowd, they set at that time records for decibels in the stadium.
Yeah.
I remember Craig Sager, rest in peace. I remember him, being at that game and showing the decibels and being like, "This is the highest recorded decibels for an outdoor stadium in sports history." It was phenomenal. Now, what was phenomenal this year was the Orioles winning 101 games, doing what nobody expected them to do, putting up the best record for the franchise since 1979. Zach, we got to figure out this echo. Maybe when one of us is speaking, we mute the other 2 mics, because I think that's
the echo's coming from yours because it's so close to Luke's, so we really can't.
So, but you can mute his mic when I'm talking. When I'm talking,
fair. We can do that.
It's just going to take a little.
We can do that.
Little bit of extra effort.
There you go.
I love your effort all the time. I do. Just little.
Not a lot we can do about it today, unfortunately.
That
but
little bit of extra in extraordinary.
Well, I guess we're gonna have to do that.
No, but. The 101 wins, phenomenal. This team was exciting all year. They've got the Rookie of the Year in Gunnar Henderson, the Manager of the Year in Brandon Hyde, potentially the Comeback Player of the Year in Ryan O'Hearn. Kyle Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez established themselves as top of the rotation pitchers, and they get to the postseason, and they lost 3 straight. When we come back from our break, we are going to dive into all of that with our senior managing editor, Luke Jackson. I do want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by the Baltimore County Police Department, which is hosting a hiring event Saturday, October 28th. It will take place at the Public Safety Building, 700 East Joppa Road in Towson. Applicants can complete multiple parts of the hiring process, including agility testing, written testing, and the ability to apply on the spot. Members of our specialized units will be in attendance to further discuss career opportunities with the police department. With the police department. And starting in the afternoon, there will also be a trunk or treat event that is open to the community event if you're not interested in joining the BCPD. To find out more, contact their office at 410-887-4584 or 410-887-5521. When we come back in, more with Luke Jackson. That's next on the Bat Around.
The Baltimore County Police Department is now hiring with competitive salaries, including for experienced police officers, starting salaries between over $68,000 and over $82,000 based on your prior service time, accepting up to 7 years of service times with only 6 weeks in the academy, minimum of 2 years prior experience. And police cadet starting salaries at over $32,000 must be between the ages of 18 and 20, but you can apply starting at 17 and a half. Must have a high school diploma or GED equivalent at the time of the hire, U.S. citizen at the time of the hire, and a valid driver's license. So if you have a passion for service and want a career for life, now is the time to join the Baltimore County Police Department. Call 410-887-5542 or visit joinbaltimorecountypd.com.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
The Maryland 5-Star returns to iconic Fair Hill October 19th to 22nd, marking the next chapter in Maryland's equestrian tradition. Best described as the triathlon of horse eventing, you won't want to miss this thrilling sport. Enjoy a fall festival with local fare, retail vendors, and tons of family fun. Come for the event and stay for the experience in Cecil County, home to the Chesapeake Bay waterfront with vibrant small towns and accommodations to suit every desire. It's the place to be in October. Visit maryland5star.us for tickets.
Come for a game, stay for everything else. Book an unforgettable fall getaway in Charm City. Enjoy only in Baltimore festivals, mouthwatering eats, and endless entertainment. Treat yourself to a staycation in the heart of downtown, or try one of the city's many charming neighborhood hotels. And don't miss out on packages for free parking, breakfast, and more. Plan your stay at baltimore.org/hotels.
Why bet with the big boys this football season? Instead, try your hand with the local book, Superbook Sports, this fall. Superbook Sports is the book next door. Just a dedicated team of the best odds makers in Las Vegas, making sure you get the best prices and parlays anywhere. And now, Superbook will give you a bonus of up to $250 when you sign up and wager on the same day and use the promo code PRESSBOX23. So bet with the best and use promo code PRESSBOX23 this football season with Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Picking a restaurant to try for the first time? Let's look at the Costas Inn. Here's a few checklist items. Quality of the food? Check. Quality of service? Check. Does restaurant have plenty of free parking? Check. And finally, does restaurant have delicious steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, and specials galore? Check, check, check. Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. They check all the boxes.
What's up, everyone? It's Tyus Bowser, and I've had so much fun hanging out with Rita and putting up with Glenn the last couple years that I've decided to do it again. Season 3 of the Tyus Bowser Show is happening this year, as we'll be all over town, giving you the chance to get to know me and some of my teammates. As we talk football, life in general, and just say what needs to be said. You can find out more about the show by going to PressboxOnline.com/Bowser. If you don't live in the area, you can watch the shows live on Facebook and YouTube. And if you miss one, you can listen Friday nights at 105.7 The Fan. So we'll see you all season long for the Tyus Bowser Show, a partnership of Pressbox and Great Ace Memorabilia.
The next Tyus Bowser Show is Tuesday, October 17th at Mother's North Grill in Timonium. It's brought to you by Superbook Sports and AJ Michaels, and if you or a loved one have a gambling problem, visit helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Well, welcome back in.
Wild way to return.
To the Bat Around. We're talking about different celebrations for huge moments in Baltimore sports, and I was talking about my one buddy crying, and Zach was talking about when the Ravens beat the Vikings in the infamous snow game, and I turned to my buddy, and he was crying at how ridiculous it was. He was crying for a mediocre Ravens team in the middle of the regular season beating the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
And then Zach, who did you hug and for what?
So it was the Adafe Owe fumble game where he forced it from Clyde Edwards-Helaire against Kansas City. I think it was 21.
It was last season. It was last season.
I think it was 2 years ago.
No, it was 2 years ago.
Two years ago, yeah.
Wow.
It was 2021.
Playing together.
And there was this great guy sitting next to me. That's the way I'm going to put it. I'm not going to say what I said off air. He was a great guy. And just some random guy that we just started hugging after that. So we were all happy. Everyone was dancing to the aisles as what's his face on the radio says.
I don't know. John,
the guy who does the radio for the Orioles.
When John Means threw his no-hitter, it was the day that I got my booster shot for COVID, and we were at it was Cinco de Mayo, so we were at Plaza del Mexico in Fallston, and this one guy came in and he says to me, "You know, John Means is throwing a no-hitter," and I'm like, "Yes, everybody knows that. Please do not talk about it." and then when they got the final out, who did I hug? That guy. I don't know who he is. I don't remember what he looks like, and I probably shouldn't have in the middle of a pandemic. But I said, you know what? I got the shot today, and I just hugged the guy.
My guy was like a clone of Santa. Like he was Santa's size, Santa's build. Great guy.
I have hugged many strangers in many an epic.
It's awesome. That's yeah.
So Luke, thank you for coming in to sit with us in
Thanks for
studio
having
today. It's always one of our favorite shows when you're in here because we just get to talk Orioles baseball for a really long time, and you were a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this team, so we really enjoy it. And let's kick things off. We started talking about how some guys who could be receiving awards for the Orioles. Gunnar Henderson, he's a shoo-in to win Rookie of the Year, I would imagine, this year. You could make a case for Tristan Casas and is it Josh Young?
Josh Young?
Josh Young. Yeah. But he got hurt. We believe that the Gunnar is a shoo-in. Does he get MVP votes?
Oh, I think MVP votes you can vote up to 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
So probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I think on Baseball Reference he was like a 6-win player, and on Fangraphs I think he was like a 5-win player. So yeah, typically those guys get MVP votes. Like Cedric got MVP votes.
Right.
2 years ago. So yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, and the thing about Gunnar is like he's not close to as good as he's going to be.
Nope.
He's going to get better against lefties,
Mm-hmm.
and managers late in games won't be able to feed him necessarily the left-handed relievers and get him out at the rate with those guys that they did this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's going to get better with that. And for me, I'm interested to hear what you guys have to think. I think he's earned the everyday shortstop position next year for me.
I agree.
It's hard because I think Jackson Holliday is going to make the team out of spring training.
I understand where you're going with that because I do think that Jackson will have a huge camp and he'll make his case for making the team out of spring. And now there's not as much disincentive to not have him on the team out of camp. But even if that were the case, I think he could play second. Because for me, I've seen, yeah, sure. And I've seen Jackson play short and second. He can do either. I haven't seen him play third. He played a little bit of third. But for me, Gunnar, sort of like how Carlos Correa with the Astros several years back, he really cemented himself at shortstop. And then Alex Bregman, they drafted him after that, and he was a shortstop at LSU. And there were some who thought that Alex was actually a better defensive shortstop than Carlos, but Carlos had earned the everyday shortstop position.
Yeah, I remember that.
So Alex played third base, and he became one of the best defensive third basemen in the league. And so I don't know why that couldn't happen with Jackson just at second base. For me, I think by the middle of the year, Gunnar was a better defensive shortstop than Mateo.
Yeah.
I think that was clear.
I agree.
And I think Mateo's defense backed up this year because he wasn't playing as much.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing a little more sporadically, and so maybe he just didn't stay in the same rhythm as he did last year when he was playing every day. I thought that, and for Mateo, I thought his defense at shortstop last year and the range that he showed and the amount of batted balls that he got to, I thought that was a big part of why they turned a corner in 2022 because that kind of defender they just didn't have prior to that. But I think Gunnar has earned shortstop, and I think if you keep him at one place defensively and just tell him this is where you're going to be, I think his bat will get even better.
Yeah,
because I do think there's some correlation there, and let's not underestimate how difficult it is to go back and forth between two positions and play them at a high level. I know early in the year he struggled a little bit with his throws from third base, but the thing about Gunnar is he doesn't struggle at one thing for very long.
That's correct.
And so I can tell you right now, he worked his ass off to get better defensively at third base, and by the second half of the year, he was indistinguishable in terms of the quality of his defense at short and third. And that's really a credit to his work ethic, also a credit to the coaches and all that. But really, it's Gunnar because of how driven he is. And so, yeah, I mean, he's a dog.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think when I sit back and I think about it, you're probably right. He's probably earned the starting shortstop. He's going to be an MVP candidate year in and year out, and that's a guy. If he wants to play shortstop, then he's going to play shortstop.
And do you guys see a future for Arias? Because I
on
think
this team.
I think that ship has kind of sailed.
I agree. And it's just for me, a big part of why the Orioles won 101 games this year is depth, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah,
idea
definitely.
that you could, so if Urias is like the 13th position player on the team, 12th, he's like still a league average-ish type of player. And so that was a big part of their success, that they could pluck anybody from the bench and it's like a league average type of guy.
No doubt.
But when you see like the playoffs play out, like he looked a little out of his depth. And in the first game, I would say, and then in the second 2 games, I don't even think he played.
I don't think he did either, yeah.
And so in the playoffs, even in short sample sizes in the playoffs, you can sort of see who rises and who just kind of, doesn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, and I don't know if he's arbitration eligible, but
I don't know.
I believe I don't think he is, because I think this is his final year of pre-arbitration eligible, because he wasn't listed amongst.
So they could bring him to camp pretty easily, and then if they have injuries, they can slide him in or whatever.
Yeah.
Or in camp, if another team needs an infielder, and you could swap an infielder for whatever.
And Ryan and I noted last week that the defensive metrics have plummeted for Urias. And Ryan's...
Yeah, that's that. And sorry to cut you off, but like I saw that the defensive metrics for him at third base this year were not great.
No, not at all.
And I was watching him, and I thought that his hands were still really soft. He's got really good hands at third. And then later in the season, particularly in September, you sort of saw his defense start to take a step back.
Yeah.
Like very obviously to your eyes, like goosing throws and that sort of thing. So, yeah, he was not the defender this year that he was in 22. I think that's pretty clear.
Ramon Urias is arbitration eligible
this
year.
Okay.
How much?
I don't know. Somebody had posted how much
there were like
those
16
raises.
of them. So I'm guessing it's about $2 million.
Eric Garfield just texted me, friend of the show.
$4.2 million, I think, is what he's projected to make.
How much?
I feel like I saw 4.
Eric said $2.01 million. From a bump from $750K.
I could see him being dealt before.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't be for much, but he's useful for some team out there.
Yeah, he's a Rays type of player to me. They're not going to take him, but that's a guy I think would fit in pretty well there. That's not going to be the team that trades for him, but I think he probably is a starter on 15 of the 30 teams, at least.
Yeah, I would call him a second division player.
Okay, that's fair.
So yeah, Rock wrote the article today. It was his 4 a.m. post today, and it has all the Orioles arbitration eligible players, and it's Ramon Urias going from $734,700 to $2 million. The $4.2 million was Ryan Mountcastle. They had very similar salaries this past season.
Next year will be a big year for Ryan.
Yeah,
to show that he can take some steps forward, and hopefully stay healthy over the course of a full year, because of the way he produces in the middle of the lineup with a lot of home runs and RBIs, that arbitration number is going to keep going way up.
Yeah.
So for me, he's got to show a little bit more that he would want to, that the Orioles would want to keep him around in 25 for like $7 or $8 million.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, and we were talking about with Stan. Stan thinks he could be part of a package for a trade.
Yeah.
This is the first time that I've thought about Ryan Mountcastle potentially not being a part of this Orioles team next year, potentially being traded, and didn't have a problem with it. And it's not that I love Ryan Mountcastle. I'm a big Ryan Mountcastle guy, but I also think that the Orioles need to add a player to the middle of their order that can impose at least a little bit of fear. I don't think Anthony Santander and Ryan Mountcastle do that because they know how to strike these guys out.
Yeah.
And I think that the most obvious position to do that at would be first base.
A couple of years in the league will expose limitations for any guy. And we've blatantly seen over and over and over again, no matter how hot he gets at certain times, what the limitations to Ryan Mountcastle are. I don't think those things are going away or changing at any point.
Yeah, but he's also the type of guy that you hate to give up on because of how... I mean, you look at his StatCast page, and his batted ball profile is like bright red.
It crushes it.
When he squares up the ball, he crushes it. And if there's any right-handed hitter on this roster right now that could conquer that wall pretty consistently, it's Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
So you like that. However, it's first base only, and the approach has gotten a little bit better, not a ton better.
Mm-hmm.
and you just wonder if that's always going to hold him back from producing the kind of way that his batted ball profile suggests he should. And I think that they're still going to work with him. I would be a little surprised if he's dealt this year. I don't think they want to give up on him just yet. But I mean, anybody's available in the right deal, aside from a handful of guys in the organization. So nothing, I guess, would shock me. But that batted ball profile is something that they like, that they still want to work with, and we'll see how it turns out. I would love to see him be able to use those right center field bleachers.
Mm-hmm.
He's got that kind of power, and you've seen it a little bit here and there, but not super consistently.
Sure.
I would love to see him be able to use that part of the field with his power a little more often. So,
especially in Camden Yards.
Yeah.
Especially here.
Yeah. And I'd like to see him bat lower. I'd like to see him. And again, I think that's why I would like to see them bring in a guy that can hit in the middle of the order, so Mountcastle can move lower. Maybe take some of that pressure off of him. Because I
can see that.
I wonder how much of the swing and miss and the chase rate is because of the pressure of hitting in the middle of the order and feeling like you have to produce day in and day out.
Well, and the Orioles are really lacking that guy right now because I think Gunnar is going to go into next year as their presumed leadoff guy. I think you saw what Cedric Mullins did down the stretch, and they kind of went away from that. Since the All-Star break, they hadn't done that in the majority of games. I don't even think it was close to the majority of games.
Hadn't done what?
Batted Cedric Mullins leadoff.
Oh.
It was mostly Rutschman and Henderson down the stretch. So I think you're looking at probably Rutschman the 2-hole, Henderson 1, so that you do need that guy in the middle of the lineup. It could be O'Hearn. I would like to believe it's O'Hearn. But then again,
O'Hearn.
I don't think O'Hearn is going to be your, Yordan Alvarez kind of guy, but he's
a platoon player.
He can't hit lefties. That hurts.
And that's the thing. And if you look at the lineups in the postseason, you look at the teams around the league. Everybody plays every day. You look at the Texas Rangers lineup. Name a platoon in the Texas Rangers lineup.
Well, sometimes they'll switch off Grossman and Garver.
Yeah, Grossman hitting third in the first game of the postseason. I said to my buddy, I was like, he shouldn't be hitting third on anybody's team. Watch, he'll double here or something, and he doubled in his first at bat. But
Ryan O'Hearn had a really good year at the plate, 22% better than the average major league hitter. The guy was really good across the board, but I don't know
platoon role.
If he can't hit lefties, then he's not going to be an everyday middle of the order guy.
Luke, you had a point you were making. I interrupted. I apologize.
I don't know what the point was.
I don't know what the point was of coming into the show today.
No, that's not true.
I know. I'm just kidding. We'll see what they do in the off season. And that's a question that I want to ask you guys. I think we all know what the Orioles' weaknesses are right now. Mm-hmm. They probably need another lockdown reliever. You can't have another season where your go-to guys are like a Brian Baker or the September-October version of Jacob Webb. It's a bridge a gap. Felix Bautista is not going to be here at any point next season. So you really don't want to go closer by committee. I've seen too many times where that fails. You need that guy that you can depend on night in and night out. The one guy that comes to mind that's going to be a free agent is Josh Hader. Now there's this whole turmoil there because he refuses to pitch beyond 3 outs during the regular season, apparently. I don't know if it's a downright refusal or he's not willing to do it when his team's not in playoff contention. Either way, it's a red flag. Do the Orioles need to go out and find that legitimate reliever? Do they need to go out and find that middle-of-the-order bat? And more specifically, are they going to be in play for a top-of-the-line starting pitcher? I think the days need to be done where you're depending on signing a veteran like Kyle Gibson to anchor your rotation.
I thought Gibson did a nice job this year.
For the most part.
I thought his ERA was a little bit elevated because of the starts where he would just eat it.
Yeah.
Where he didn't have it.
Yep.
And he would still pitch into the 6th inning, give up a ton of runs. So I thought his ERA was
15 games,
ERA was a little elevated because of that. I thought for the vast majority of the time he gave his team a chance to win, and he pitched 190 innings. Thought he did a nice job.
I despised the Kyle Gibson signing. I thought it was horrible. 11 million to a guy that really hasn't had much success in this league in recent years. But then he comes out, and I thought he was pretty good. Like Luke said, he was genuinely pretty reliable.
He won 15 games. He pitched to a 4.73 ERA.
What was the FIP?
It was better.
through 192 innings. Let me take a look for you. The FIP for
his peripherals were actually pretty decent, and that's been the case throughout.
The FIP was 4.13.
Okay,
that's been the case throughout his career. That his peripherals are better than his results for whatever reason. Did you know that Kyle Gibson now is a 20-win player for his career, 20-WAR player for his career?
He's a 0.9 this past season.
Oh, on Fangraphs, I mean.
Oh, Fangraphs.
Fangraphs, it was like 2 point something. But anyway,
gotcha.
That's beside the point. I do think that a veteran reliever with closing experience would be helpful. Mm-hmm. Step up from the Michael Givens signing. I think certainly. I don't know off the top of my head who that could be. I don't think it's going to be Josh Hader. There's nothing in the past several years that tells me that they're going to spend $15 million a year on a reliever, and that's what Josh is going to command. He's going to command 3 years, 45, 4 years, 60, whatever it is. They're just not going to do that.
We've talked about it before on the show, but the Nats won the World Series with probably the worst bullpen in playoff history. They were awful.
I do think that the Orioles have some interesting internal options for closer. Tyler Wells being one.
Comes to mind.
That the home run tendencies aren't great for a closer. However, I don't think he was that homer prone as a reliever in 21, and with his velocity ticking up, he should be. I think it would be okay. DL Hall is another one. I just wonder about whether he can hold up physically.
Yeah,
back-to-back days.
Yeah,
2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5. That's something that a closer has to be able to do, and that doesn't seem to me to be his kind of role. For me, he's probably more of a guy who can come in the middle innings, give you 4+ outs, and then gets 2 or 3 days of rest, and then does it again the next day, the game after that. So that's, for me, probably more of DL Hall's role, just based on how his inability to stay healthy to this point in his career.
Sure.
And it's nothing serious, but it's always nagging injuries, and that might always be the case with DL, that you're just not going to get a full season out of him. And generally, you don't want to go into a season thinking my closer probably is going to get hurt at some point. That's
right. No.
Probably the way you don't want to go. But it was interesting at the end of the year that Tyler Wells seemed to be Brandon Hyde's top choice for that. But I do think bringing someone in who has at least done it before, with some success, is a pretty decent idea.
So you've got Josh Hader, Will Smith, David Robertson, Craig Kimbrell, Drew Pomeranz, Trevor May, Matt Moore. These are all guys who are Trevor Rosenthal, Aroldis Chapman. If he ever puts on an Orioles uniform, he'll be the first Orioles player that I just outright boo every time he comes to the game. I hate him on a high level. I just think he's a garbage human being. But there's a number of guys who are out there. Josh Hader, Will Smith, they may be out of the realm of possibility for the Orioles, but I would not hate to see Trevor May or David Robertson pitching for the Orioles next year, or Craig Kimbrell for that matter. They're all getting up there in age. Those are guys who I think could be fits on short deals, maybe a 1 or 2 year deal while you're waiting for Felix Bautista to come back.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. I think they'll sift through all of that, and and we'll see what their appetite is for a relief pitcher. I mean, I think they gave Michael Givens $4 or $5 million, which was $4 or $5 million down the toilet. Mm-hmm. So
definitely,
hopefully it's better spent this year.
Yeah, hopefully it's better spent. I'd like to see them get, and the point about Kyle Gibson isn't that he didn't do a good job this year, because by and large he kept the Orioles in just about every game that he started. You don't win 15
by
games.
all accounts, terrific human being.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Oh, yeah.
And in that regard, he did his job. I guess the point I'm making is that I think you're past the point where you're looking for that guy to anchor your rotation. Who are you going to be? I mean, you look at what Chris Bassett did. You look at what Nathan Eovaldi did with the smaller deal. I mean, Chris Bassett got what, $15 million a year?
I think it was $360 for Chris Bassett. So I mean, so he was definitely worth what he got. Mm-hmm. And one thing I will add is that because of the playoff system with 12 teams in going to the playoffs, and then around the time of the trade deadline, I would say you have 18 teams really thinking that they have a chance at the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So that means you really only have 10 to 12 defined sellers. And so there's not much starting pitching out there at the trade deadline, and B, whatever's out there, there's so much competition for
bidding
it.
war.
So you end up overpaying for someone like Jack Flaherty.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think in the past you might have been able to say as a team, okay, we might be a little short in the rotation, but we love the rest of our team. We'll see how it goes with our internal options, and then we'll evaluate ahead of the trade deadline, and we'll get somebody if need be, right?
Here's one.
I don't think you can do that anymore. I think that I think a lot of your work has to be done, starting pitching-wise at least, in the offseason, just because I don't think you can bank at the trade deadline that guys are going to be available. There were really only a handful of starting pitchers available at the trade deadline this year.
Yeah.
And, Verlander, Scherzer, Flaherty, Montgomery. Maybe I'm missing one. I think that's really who we were talking about.
I think that's about right.
Lorenzen,
yeah.
He threw a no-hitter and then fell off a cliff.
It didn't make the playoff
it's
roster.
funny. I think I'm not sure if you okay.
At least he
was. He pitched against the Braves. I saw him pitching.
I don't think he made the wild card one though.
Maybe not.
I don't believe so.
And so the funny thing with Lorenzen is that he was another guy who was sailing over his previous innings high, and predictably, after the no-hitter, fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to criticize it too much because that's probably going to be like the highlight of his career individually. So
AJ makes two really good points in the comments, by the way. One, he said Eduardo Rodriguez was also available as a starting pitcher. That's true.
Apparently available-ish.
Right. Like, he was one of the options. But his other point is asking if Dylan Tate is done for good. And that's a name that hasn't crossed my mind in about...
arbitration eligible. I would imagine he's going to be non-tendered.
Okay.
I think.
Well, he's due. He made $1.5 million last year, and the numbers from MLB Trade Rumors, according to Rockabaco, is he's not getting a bump. It's 1.5.
I would imagine that they just move on.
Well,
for me,
maybe. I mean, he was a guy you got absolutely nothing out of this year.
No.
The $1.5 million. Are you willing to pay him that, or do you want to spend that money elsewhere? It's not to me. The $1.5 million is chump change. It's
cheap.
Baseball.
Yeah.
Like I was surprised that no one asked Mike at the season-ending press conference, like, "What's the deal? Like, what happened? Like,
I
think everybody just forgot about him.
Like, his name has never crossed my mind.
Does he need surgery? Like, we heard forearm tightness, right?
I think that's what it was.
Entire year.
In that same article the Rock put out this morning, he said nobody even knows if he had surgery. We don't know nobody knows what happened. Nobody knows if he's had surgery, if he needs surgery.
Someone probably should have asked.
That's completely bizarre. That's completely.
This was one of your best relievers in 22.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to him, and everyone just forgot about him. I don't know.
Do we have Elias's number? Can we get him on the phone?
Yeah, we'll have to call him up.
That was very strange.
Yeah,
because that's really at those end of season press conferences. That's when you want closure on certain injury things.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
Well, the Orioles were also a little weird about DL Hall going down to Florida for a little while. We didn't really hear about that, and then he was just back.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, it's one of those things where I was moving forward, like you said. I haven't even thought about Dylan Tate, so I was approaching next season without even him in mind.
Right.
And that's another. And it wasn't until I read Rock's post this morning that I remembered this guy could still be part of the Orioles team next year.
Yeah.
When he got hurt, and then he had the setback, I said he's not pitching for the team at any point this year, and he didn't.
No.
I wish I would have been wrong about that. I think, but a lot of people felt the same way.
He tried to, pitch on minor league rehab, and his walks were way up.
Is that what happened?
I think his command was way out of whack, and then at some point, I think maybe around early August, they just gave up on him.
You're correct. So he pitched in 13 minor league games between A+, AA, and AAA, 15.19 ERA.
Yeah,
so not great.
Not good.
That's not great.
Not great at all.
Speaking of relief pitchers with inflated ERAs, Shintaro Fujinami, there's been some back and forth. He signed for 1 year, $3.25 million, Luke, with the Oakland Athletics prior to this season.
Mm-hmm.
It's his first year in the league, so he's a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Baseball Reference, he's pre-arbitration eligible, and he's not a free agent until 2029. But I don't think that's how it works with him.
Correct. I think he's signed a straight 1 year deal.
I think so too.
Yeah. So he's a free agent after this season. There's a number of players: Fujinami, Kyle Gibson, Adam Frazier, Aaron Hicks, and Jack Flaherty. Do you foresee any of these players being back
Well,
next
I don't
season?
think Jack Flaherty will be back.
No.
Adam Frazier, I don't think he's back. Fuji, I could see them maybe looking at that later in the offseason if he's still hanging around, and if they think that like 6 weeks in spring training working directly with him without the pressure of games will get him in a better frame of mind. But and I think that's at least possible. I think that's within the realm of possibility. Kyle Gibson, I think it's within the realm of possibility if they strike out on all their targets that in January, if Kyle Gibson still doesn't have a team that they could reunite. I think that's within the realm of possibility. The other one was Aaron Hicks. I think especially if they move on from one of their current outfielders, so that's Santander, Mullins, Hayes, I think there's a possibility that they could add him for depth purposes.
Yeah.
And frankly, in September and in October, he was their best option in center field.
Yeah. My hot take is that I think at least one of the major Orioles outfielders, meaning the 4 guys you just mentioned, are going to be moved on from the season. I
agree. I think between
I think it's more likely to be Hayes.
Mullins,
I agree.
Hayes, and Santander, I think, are expected to make somewhere in the neighborhood of like $25 million next year. So those guys got a little expensive quickly, but that's the way it works, and that's the way it should work. I don't know if I actually last offseason I thought they would move on from one of those guys.
Yes, I do too.
And I think it's possible that we've kind of seen the best from all of them at this point.
I agree with that as well.
I think certainly with Mullins we've seen the best from him.
I think the Mullins, unfortunately, if we're looking at a graph of his performance, it's just going to keep going down. Unfortunately, that's the way I feel.
And wonderful 13th round pick. Round pick.
Yeah.
I think he's on the other side of the mountain at this point. And
agreed.
And I'm not trying to overreact to a really bad September. Just look at his production over the past several years.
How much of that has to do, because he was arguably their best player before the first injury. What he was doing offensively,
he just tends to wear down as a season goes along.
Yeah,
he's 5'8".
Yeah,
And I'm also like just naturally biased against players who can't throw.
Yeah, the arm.
It's a turnoff for me.
We're coming off 2 straight years of a 107 OPS plus and a 101 OPS plus. So more or less slightly better than league average. The defense is great, but he can't throw.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not
for me. And I know that the Phillies right now have like an all defense center fielder hitting 9th. I understand that, and I'm not trying to, bag on Mullins. I mean, he's been a wonderful Oriole
for sure.
He's been an absolutely wonderful Oriole. You're looking for ways to get better, to get into that, to create a championship team. And for me, I walked out of those playoff games 1 and 2, thinking that they probably needed to upgrade in center field.
Paul said it on Twitter. He said one of the worst at-bats of the year was in Game 1 when Mullins chased that ball in the dirt and struck out. Yeah. One of the worst at-bats of the year.
It was that at-bat and then Austin Hayes at-bat in Game 3 where he took 2 strikes and he swung at 3 pitches that were nowhere near the strike zone and struck out. That was one of the worst at-bats of the year also. Between him and Hayes, and look, you're sacrificing a lot of defense, but I am willing to give Mullins another shot. If he can stay healthy, I think he's far better than what we saw. Hayes, we know who Austin Hayes is at this point. I don't think there's any doubt that Austin Hayes, his last 2 seasons, if you look at his stat line, they're almost identical. And he's a guy who will have a huge first half for you,
streaky,
and then the second half of the season he's gonna fall back. And how often is he playing with an injury that we don't know about? And have you ever? And Zach is the one who brought this to my attention maybe a year and a half ago, and I've noticed it ever since. Austin Hayes has never met a pitch that he hasn't thought about swinging at. He offers at everything.
He does.
At everything. I feel like if he's not ripping at the first pitch, he doesn't have an idea of how to approach it.
Even when he takes a pitch that's 6 feet outside, he's taking the bat off his shoulder. He's checking a swing.
And I get that at the major league level, you have to get started early to catch up to 100. I understand that. Not every pitch is 100, man. There's no approach. For me, and it leads you to, Heston Kjerstad, Colton Cowser.
Yep.
Colton Cowser was dreadful.
Yeah.
For the Orioles, he was dreadful.
Yeah, not
and then,
great.
And
horrible.
then he went back to Norfolk, and it continued. He lost 30 points in his batting average before turning it on in the postseason.
Kind of concerned, yeah.
How do we feel about Colton Cowser? I think Heston Kjerstad's a dude. I think that's a guy who's going to hit for power.
Same.
Ball comes out of his bat hot.
Yeah.
That's always been the case with Heston. Now, if just word of warning that if you give Heston 500 plate appearances next year, he's going to strike out close to 150 times.
Yeah.
And he's going to swing and miss in some big spots. I'm just telling you. I'm just letting you know now. However, I mean, the power is so real. And when you look at his swing, boy, you think about a swing tailor-made for Camden Yards.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah. That you like that. Now, interesting to me is that they didn't seem to trust him in the outfield.
Yeah,
They DH'd a lot, and I don't know what their internal evaluation of him is defensively. Obviously, they didn't think he was as good defensively as Santander and right, Hicks and right, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Didn't they put O'Hearn in left field at one point?
Oh, a couple times.
Instead,
yeah.
When everybody was lauding Hyde for the double switches and stuff
like that. Oh, the Houston thing. And they put O'Hearn in left field to get
Kjerstad out of there.
the game. So I don't maybe they think he's like a first base DH type, and maybe that's your answer at first. You were talking about first base before.
It sure could be.
Maybe that's what your answer is. So, but with Cowser, I saw a lot of him at Aberdeen. I was never like his biggest fan. I didn't see him necessarily as like an impact type of hitter, in the way that he was talked about when he was drafted.
Sure.
I saw him more as like a complimentary piece than an impact guy, at the top of the order. That was just my takeaway. That was a while ago when I saw him a lot at Aberdeen, but that was my takeaway then. So I've, my personal biases are that, I've never been like his biggest fan. Not to say that he can't contribute to a winning Orioles team. I'm not saying that at all. Just again, that's what I saw. So if you want to move on from Mullins or Hayes, where does that leave you in the outfield?
Exactly. That's the next point I was going to make, because if it's not Kjerstad and it's not Cowser, then you got to
get somebody.
Yeah, Mullins, I think, is here out of necessity next year. Maybe Hayes is as well. Because until Enrique Bradfield's ready, and that might take 2-3 more years. That's a guy where you're probably sacrificing the offense because the defense is
I'm
so
not
good.
a Brad. I hated that draft pick. I don't.
I saw Bradfield once at Aberdeen, and I will hold off on judgment until I see him more.
Okay. Well, that's fair, and I haven't seen him live yet either. But I did watch a little bit of Vanderbilt this year. I always try to catch their games because they're always so good. And every time I saw him, I was like, "Yeah, this guy's a unbelievable speed, like 80-80, unbelievable." But the guy really doesn't hit that much from what I saw. And that was at Vanderbilt, where you should be. The guys who get drafted in the first round from Vanderbilt are usually hitting like 390, 400, and this guy wasn't doing that.
Have you noticed that the guys who get drafted out of Vanderbilt, they seem to peak early? Like
Dansby Swanson.
But I mean, Dansby Swanson's a wonderful defensive shortstop, and I guess he really doesn't have to hit that much.
I think
to be worth it. To be worth his contract. Like, he's like one of my favorite guys to watch play shortstop is Dansby Swanson. But anyway, it just doesn't seem like those Vanderbilt guys in recent years have popped in the major leagues the way their draft position would indicate that they should.
I mean, his draft year, he hit 279 at Vanderbilt. And not everything is about batting average, but you remember a lot of these guys, Dansby Swanson being one of them, and of course he was a first overall pick. I'm going to assume he hit like 400 at Vanderbilt. It's a lot of the guys who go in the first round from that school hit much better than 279. Not the batting average is everything. The on-base percentage was 410. That's good. The OPS is 839. I don't look at those numbers and say, wow, that's incredible for a guy at Vanderbilt who got drafted in the first round.
335 for Dansby Swanson his final year of it.
Okay, so that's lower than I thought.
I imagine that I will see a lot of Enrique next year, and I'll have a
fair
better
enough.
sense of his strengths and weaknesses and all that. But yeah, I'll leave it at that at this point.
Fair enough. Yeah.
25 stolen bases in 25 games. In his brief pro debut this year.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Enrique Bradfield.
Oh, okay.
25 steals, only 2 caught stealing in 25 games. .291 overall. He was bad at Aberdeen, but Florida Coast League 556. Delmarva in 17 games he had .302.
A lot of the SEC competition though is better than those in the A-ball.
Well, I'm sure, but it doesn't suck that he hit .302 at Delmarva.
No, definitely not.
And it's his first. He got to taste high A the same year that he was drafted, and it wasn't great, but he'll bounce back. Now I don't know. I never looked at him and thought that he's going to be a guy who's going to hit 300 at the big league level. But if he can hit 240, then that's a guy who's probably going to steal 70 bases a year. And the defense, and you have to believe that the arm is better than Cedric Mullins.
I would hope so, yeah.
I don't know. Getting back to the original point, maybe Hayes and Mullins are here next year out of necessity more than anything else, because after Kalzer and Kjerstad, unless you think that Jordan Westburg can play the outfield or Kobe Mayo can play the outfield.
See, I would expect Kobe Mayo to get some reps in right field in spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean that he would be like major league ready right fielder, but I would expect him to get some reps in right field.
To me, if you ask me, is Kobe Mayo going to be a better hitter than Austin Hayes? I'd pretty confidently say I think so.
I think he'll hit for more power. I don't know that he hits for 270.
Oh, maybe not. Maybe not.
I saw a lot of Kobe Mayo at Aberdeen. That's a guy I loved at Aberdeen.
Yeah. He mashes.
Yes.
He absolutely mashes. And
that guy impacts the baseball.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a guy.
Central casting. He's 6'5", 240, whatever it is. He looks like an all-star coming off the bus, and that's what you need in the playoffs.
AJ's
central casting dogs.
AJ saying he deserves time at third base. I agree, but it's just gonna be hard to play him there. Holiday, Westburg.
I don't think the glove
Who
plays.
needs to play?
Mayo.
Mayo.
I don't think the glove plays. You don't
glove plays where?
At third base.
He's saying at third base. I don't think it plays.
I haven't seen enough of him at third base to really have an opinion about his defense. I understand that it's gotten better than what I saw at Aberdeen. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen him enough defensively the past year or so to really have an opinion about him at third. He's got plenty of arm for it. I know that. It's just a matter of, where would he line up, in the defensive pecking order, so to speak, with like a Jordan Westburg at third.
Norby.
With if they decide to put Henderson at third. Norby, he's another guy that they'll have to make a decision on. I liked him at Aberdeen too. Really great feel for the barrel. Mm-hmm. Among Orioles minor leaguers right now, he might have the best feel for the barrel out of anybody.
He's a guy who I think professional hitter.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, he hit over 400 in college. I don't think that's a mistake.
He can hit. And so whether it's going to be in Baltimore, whether it's going to be somewhere else, he's going to hit in the major leagues. I think he's probably going to be good enough at second base to at least stick there. And if that doesn't work out, you can toss him in most left fields, not Camden Yards left field, but you could toss him in most left fields and he'll be fine.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and we'll probably close with this. Some minor league players that the Orioles have, and we'll go down the list. For first and foremost, Arias, Mateo, Frazier. Mm-hmm. Are their replacements Jackson Holliday, Connor Norby, and Joey Ortiz?
I guess that's what they're talking about right now, right?
Yeah.
I will say this, that I would think that they would want a veteran in that infield mix, because not all those guys you just mentioned will have good years next year. Like someone will back up, and so you're going to want a veteran infielder, like someone better than Adam Frazier, and maybe it's a guy who can play everywhere, play a little bit of corner outfield too. Just some protection against one or two of these young guys backing up for whatever reason.
Sure.
And so it's just some sort of veteran you could easily project that if he stays healthy, he's going to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And so I would think that they would want to bring in someone like that. And also, just for me, you do want some veterans around. So I would expect them to do that. So.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you. I'm a bit more reserved, I guess, on Joey Ortiz. I still want to see. I guess we need more consistent playing time at the major leagues to really be able to judge him and to get a good idea of what he looks like as a player.
Well,
but I don't know about Joey Ortiz.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to wonder about him because the club preferred, even when he was really struggling, the club preferred Jorge Mateo to him.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I think that's something to wonder about, his status with the
Their
team.
treatment of Joey Ortiz told you a lot about what they think of Joey Ortiz.
Sort of very similar to the Kyle Stowers situation last year.
Right.
Yeah. We had the same conversation about Kyle Stowers last year, where we were saying, well, they didn't really play him every day, and they waited a long time to call him up. Like, are they really in on this guy or not?
Right.
Like, because we had seen how they treat guys who they're really in on. Like, Gunnar came up, played every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know on Joey Ortiz. And obviously, there's only 4 infield spots, so you can't.
Right.
I would imagine that maybe a couple of these guys are packaged for a starter.
Yeah.
Where during the offseason, when you have more time to sort of than at the deadline to really figure out what you want to do with these guys, and now you have more information, data on these guys. You should know internally, what you feel about these guys at this point.
We're certainly going to find out. I'm very interested. I think that if you're looking for a utility infielder, that Ortiz could be that guy. He plays every defensive position elitely, in my opinion. He looked like he belonged at third base. He looked like he belonged at shortstop. He looked like he belonged at second. The bat, you wonder about. I like the bat speed. I think he's gotten a lot better since he came back from the injury a year and a half ago. Now you just got to wonder, can that translate to the major league level? And I think that's the biggest question for everybody. I don't think anybody questions the defense.
Yeah, and honestly, we very rarely even saw him against a right-handed pitcher.
Yeah.
It was when he was up, it was lefties.
Yeah.
So, and I remember he did have a big hit in Detroit. I think it was like in May.
Mm-hmm.
He had a big hit in Detroit that helped him win the game. So,
yeah, well, we'll see what's going to happen with that. I think I'd like to see their opinion on Connor Norby. I think we'll figure that out in spring training as well.
Yeah, I also think that it's possible that a couple of those guys are moved for a major league piece, and then maybe it's a Hayes or a Mullins or a Santander who's moved for minor league pieces,
sure,
to sort of fill in, so to speak. So I don't know. They've got a lot of position players who are capable major league players at this point, and only 9 spots. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're going to catch our final break before we come back in to do Take the Rake and close things out with our final thoughts. I want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by Pressbox's Glenn Clark Radio, which is a definitive place to find the best daily discussion of Baltimore sports. You can watch the show every weekday from 10 to noon at youtube.com/PressboxOnline or facebook.com/PressboxSports, or listen at PressboxOnline.com/radio with podcasts available on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. You never know who might pop up on GCR. This week, the guys were joined by Hall of Famer John Smoltz, Ravens and tight ends legend Derek Mason, and ESPN's Carl Ravitch. You can find those interviews and more in this week's Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressboxOnline.com. We'll be back with more on the Bat Around.
Come for a game, stay for everything else. Book an unforgettable fall getaway in Charm City. Enjoy only in Baltimore festivals, mouthwatering eats, and endless entertainment. Treat yourself to a staycation in the heart of downtown, or try one of the city's many charming neighborhood hotels. And don't miss out on packages for free parking, breakfast, and more. Plan your stay at baltimore.org/hotels.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis, ajmichaels.com.
The Maryland 5-Star returns to iconic Fair Hill October 19th to 22nd, marking the next chapter in Maryland's equestrian tradition. Best described as the triathlon of horse eventing, you won't want to miss this thrilling sport. Enjoy a fall festival with local fare, retail vendors, and tons of family fun. Come for the event and stay for the experience in Cecil County, home to the Chesapeake Bay waterfront with vibrant small towns and accommodations to suit every desire. It's the place to be in October. Visit Maryland5star.us for tickets.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
What's up, everyone? It's Tyus Bowser, and I've had so much fun hanging out with Rita and putting up with Glenn the last couple years that I've decided to do it again. Season 3 of the Tyus Bowser Show is happening this year, as we'll be all over town, giving you the chance to get to know me and some of my teammates. As we talk football, life in general, and just say what needs to be said. You can find out more about the show by going to pressboxonline.com/Bowser. If you don't live in the area, you can watch the shows live on Facebook and YouTube. And if you miss one, you can listen Friday nights at 105.7 The Fan. So we'll see you all season long for the Tyus Bowser Show, a partnership of Pressbox and Great Ace Memorabilia.
The next Tyus Bowser Show is Tuesday, October 3rd at Guilford Hall Brewery in Station North. It's brought to you by Superbook Sports. And don't forget, if you or a loved one has a gambling problem, visit helpmygamblingproblem.org.
6 chicken tenders made from fresh, never frozen Royal Farms world-famous chicken, a family-sized order of Western fries, honey mustard dipping sauce, and a 2-liter bottle of Dr. Pepper. It's Royal Farms' new Tucker's Tenders Meal. It's Justin Tucker's favorite, and at only $19.99, it'll be your favorite meal too. The new Tucker's Tenders Meal, available only at Royal Farms. Now you can kick back, relax, and eat like a champion. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
The latest edition of Pressbox is available now. On the cover, Bo Smolka dives into what's next for Lamar Jackson after receiving one of the biggest contracts in football history. Is Lamar ready to take the Ravens to the next level, now with a new offensive coordinator and new wide receivers? Also inside, we look at what new football coaches Brian Newberry and Pete Shinnick bring to Navy and Towson, respectively. And we meet players from the college football and soccer programs around the state. Pressbox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores. And you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the O's, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
Ravens fans, are you ready for the biggest game day party in Baltimore? Join us at Guilford Hall Brewery tomorrow, Sunday, October 15th for the official Ravens London Game Watch Party. We're getting started early with live music, bottomless mimosas, unlimited Guilford beer, Dunkin' coffee, and signature cocktails, games, kids zone, and appearances from special guests, including Ravens legend Jimmy Smith, Ravens cheerleaders, and the Marching Ravens Band, and Poe. Doors open at 8 a.m., so rally your flock. We'll see you at Guilford Hall. This event is free to the public with all-you-can-drink wristbands available for purchase. Visit www.guilfordhall.com for more information. We were just talking about the postseason and the leading into Take to Rake. What we did last week for Take to Rake is we each picked an Oriole, and we each picked a player outside of the Orioles. So to go first, I took Gunnar Henderson, and I took Ronald Acuna. Gunnar Henderson was 6 for 12, a home run, 2 RBIs. He had a .500 batting average, .538 on base percentage, .750 slugging, .1288 OPS.
Dog.
Acuna, 2 for 16 with a double and no RBIs. I think he had 1 stolen base. So I hit with Henderson. I did not hit with Acuna. Royce Lewis was taken by Ryan Blake. Lewis went 3 for 13, 2 home runs. Now, this was after the wild card. So this was for the DS.
Okay.
Royce Lewis, 3 for 13, 2 home runs, and 2 RBIs. And then you look at Ryan Mountcastle, who he took. Let me get to him real quick because I hadn't had a chance to look at it. My apologies. Such bad radio. In 3 games, Ryan Mountcastle went a combined 2 for 11 with a double, 2 RBIs, 4 strikeouts, and 1 walk. So that's 2 for 11. And then who was the other guy that you took? Freddie Freeman.
I took Austin Hayes and Freddie Freeman.
You took Austin
Can't
Hayes.
imagine it's even worth talking about Austin Hayes.
Freddie Freeman was 1 for 10.
Nice.
With no home runs. I don't believe he drove in any runs either. Everybody on that Dodgers team.
Yeah, I think Mookie and Freddie were like combined 1 for 25 or whatever it was.
Yeah,
not my week.
They were not good. And then you took Austin Hayes, and who was the other one?
Freddie Freeman. Austin Hayes and Freddie Freeman. Those are my two.
Austin Hayes went 3 for 11. He had that 3-hit game in game 2 with a double. No RBIs, 2 walks, but overall 3 for 11. I think it's safe to say I think I won.
I think you won too.
I think I won because Gunnar Henderson had the best. I didn't win a lot this year. I did not win a lot this year.
No, we'll have to tally it up.
Yeah, nobody's outside of Orioles picks did particularly well.
Yeah.
But Gunnar Henderson was so off. He was the only guy that showed up in the playoffs.
You won because of Gunnar.
And Jorge, our guy Jorge Mateo.
Yeah,
4-hit game, and then you had people saying they were clamoring for him. He should be starting this game because he got 4 hits. Is this the same Jorge Mateo that you thought should have been benched back in June?
Yeah. What have you done for me lately?
I did say beforehand, before Game 3, Aaron Hicks should be in center field.
Yeah.
I said the exact same thing. Yeah.
How do you feel about – I felt like he lollygagged in the outfield so much. It made me dislike him as a player.
Well, that's part of why Yankees fans sort of grew sour on him. Is that like he would have these just moments in the outfield? I really don't think it's a lack of effort. I think it's maybe more so like a lack of focus or whatever. He's really productive for the Orioles, frankly, after they picked him up. And it seemed like the change of scenery helped, and he was a godsend in June. Once they lost Mullins, and at the time Mullins was performing very well. And then throughout the course of June, really, it's absolutely right that they didn't skip a beat. The problem is that once he starts playing well, you play him every day, and then he gets hurt.
Yeah,
that's one of the big issues.
So, do you think that the issue with Hicks is that he makes business decisions in the outfield? And when I say business decisions, that he looks like he's lollygagging on balls that he determines ahead of time. This is a double regardless.
Yeah,
or this ball is not catchable.
Yeah,
regardless.
and I think that's probably the case.
Mm-hmm.
When your body has been beat up as much as his throughout the years, that if you can jog after a ball is going to be a double regardless, rather than sprint after it, and when it's going to be a double regardless, that's probably part of the calculus. Like, he didn't offend me really. I just wouldn't play him in left field. That big left field, I would not play him out there.
There were two plays that really soured me on him. One, I was at the game against Tampa Bay where the winning run scored on a base hit to right field. The guy hit hard, and he didn't expect it was hit so hard he didn't expect the guy to try to score, and the guy banked on that. So he kind of just jogged in and picked it up very casually.
I know which one you're talking about.
And then
that was not great.
The throw that he made home was phenomenal. But because he didn't come up firing and it took him a second to realize what was going on, the guy beat the throw.
Yeah.
If he comes up firing, that guy's out by 5 feet. That play and the pop-up that fell in for a double in Cleveland, he jogged after it from the get-go.
He did.
That ball could have been caught.
He did.
That ball could have been caught. Everybody hated on Frazier, who tried to make an over-the-shoulder basket catch of it and dropped it. But that ball is Aaron Hicks, and Aaron Hicks could have caught that ball if he had sprinted after it. And I thought maybe he's trying to save his legs, but then in the top of the next inning, he legged out an infield single to the pitcher where he was full bore sprinting, and that to me said he made a business decision in the outfield, and there's more glory in the base hit than making that catch on the pop-up down the line.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's
whatever is legitimately a fair point because it's not what cost them their season.
No, I think I said I wanted him in center field before the third game, just like you did, Luke, because you look at what Cedric Mullins was doing, 2-45 slide, or going into game 3, I think it was two for his last 40.
Yeah.
It just wasn't good. And the at-bats, frankly, the entire series were completely uncompetitive.
He wasn't hitting line drives that were being caught.
No. I mean, these were swings of balls in the dirt. You had to, I think if you're Brandon Hyde, you should have made the decision. Now, again, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't have changed anything, most likely. But Aaron Hicks deserved to be out there starting in center field. I think so.
Do the Orioles have a center fielder in their system right now that could replace Mullins?
I guess Kowser would be the guy.
I hated him in center field.
The only other guy that we haven't discussed, and he's not ready for the major leagues, is Judd Fabian.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's got a lot of work to do to prove himself in AA and AAA, and he would be more of a 2025 option.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say one of my buddies who's very good at this in the game really likes himself some Judd Fabian. So, I trust this guy's opinion. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
Again, he's not a 2024 option for me.
Right. That makes sense.
Getting back to take to rake. We're just going to pick one player. There's 4 teams. There's 4 teams left right now. You've got the Houston Astros, the Texas Rangers, the Arizona Diamondbacks, and the Philadelphia Phillies. I got to go with my dude. I almost picked him last week. I got to go with him. I'm a big Bryce Harper guy. I got to take Bryce Harper. I got to take him.
I love watching him play. I love watching that entire Phillies team play. Mm-hmm. That's just they make it look so fun.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And honestly, I understand that the Braves won 104 and the Phillies won 90, but if you put compare those two rosters side by side, like, is there any difference? Really?
I said last year. I said not when I say last year. I said before the season started. With the Harper injury, losing Rhys Hoskins, Trey Turner needing to get acclimated, waiting for Ranger Suarez to come back. It was going to be a slow start for the Phillies, but I thought they were every bit as good as the Braves. I saw them being the top wild card team again and making a lot of noise this year. And that's exactly what happened.
I think from about June 1 on, they played like the best team in the National League, if I'm not mistaken.
That team is a wagon, and I think that they have to be the favorites to win the World Series.
I think they're going to win the World Series.
I do too. Yeah. I think that they're back with a vengeance this year. So, anyway, Bryce Harper, for you, sir, who are you taking?
Ooh, Evan Carter. I'm staying on that train.
Evan Carter. Yordan Alvarez.
Oh. I was going to say, if nobody takes Yordan Alvarez, he's like to me, he's that guy after Harper. He might be before Harper, but Harper's just that big game player. Although Yordan Alvarez he's a freak, and he still finds another gear in the postseason. I mean, he's a monster. He is an absolute monster. Man, am I having regrets? No. Bryce Harper is the pick. All right, guys, we're going to close things out here with our final thoughts. Take to Rake was brought to you today by the current print issue of Pressbox. We are in the final days to pick up the current issue of Pressbox. On the cover, Bo Smolka dives into what's next for Lamar Jackson after receiving one of the biggest contracts in football history. Is he ready to take the Ravens to the next level with a new offensive coordinator and new wide receivers? Also inside, we look at what new football coaches Brian Newberry and Pete Shinnick bring to Navy and Towson, respectively, and we meet players from the college football and soccer programs around the state. Pressbox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores. You can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressboxOnline.com. And coming this Wednesday, a brand new issue of Pressbox featuring a cover story about the Orioles survivors. Players like Ryan Mountcastle, Anthony Santander, Cedric Mullins, and Austin Hayes, who came in during the Dan Duquette era and helped lead the team back to the postseason. Is it the Dan Duquette era or the Buck Showalter era?
Well, I think Dan drafted those players.
Yeah.
So. Dan Duquette, yeah. He was there, by the way, at game 2.
Was he
I believe. Yeah, he was.
Good seats.
Yeah, he had good seats. Yeah. I imagine he'd be able to pay for them.
Wait, he wasn't in the owner's box.
He was not. He was not in the owner's box.
That would have been glaring.
He was behind home plate, not too far from where Mike Elias usually sits. Mike Elias always has these seats like 5 rows behind home plate. He's there almost every game, and he was not too far behind that. So.
I'm wondering if they're friends, if they know each other.
I'm sure they know.
I'm sure they know each other. Yeah.
Baseball.
I doubt they're friends.
Pretty tight knit.
Yeah.
All right. So final thoughts, Luke. Final thoughts on the Orioles, and if you want to give a thought or two about the Ravens.
Ooh. I wasn't prepared for this.
We're going to come to you next.
It was a very fun summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking forward to opening day 2024. That's really all I've got on the Orioles.
Okay. We'll come back for the Ravens.
And then the Ravens, I hope they win tomorrow. I don't know.
Yeah, me too. That's all I want to say. Me too.
They should be 5-0. Anyway, Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. Again, like Luke said, great summer, great to wrap it up. Unfortunately, it's not the best way to end things, but it's I think we recapped it in a pretty good way today of highlighting the highs that came from the season, all the great things that we're looking forward to next year. So a lot of good on the horizon for the Orioles. As far as the Ravens go, angry. I was very angry after that loss to the Steelers last week. That was horrible. Disgusting. Hated it. Everything hate. 9:30 tomorrow, also disgusting. Hate the fact they're playing at 9:30 a.m.
You got to get up early on a Sunday.
I have to get up early and watch
22 years old
9:30. I have to watch the Ravens play. But
does that interrupt your normal sleep schedule?
Oh no! I would usually be up at like 8 a.m. But I like to have my coffee and sit in and
have your coffee and your donut and your eggs while watching the game.
It's Sunday morning. I guess I could.
Yeah, but then you get to watch Red Zone all day.
That's true.
That's great.
That's fair.
That is
that's
fair.
fair.
I'm really looking forward
That's
to
fair.
this.
And so, yeah, that's a great point because I feel like I haven't had an opportunity to really catch up on the league with a full Red Zone experience throughout a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait for that to really get a feel for what's going on around the league.
Fair enough.
I haven't done it yet this year either. I love those Sundays where
Oh,
if the Ravens don't play or they play on like Monday night or something like that, you get to watch Red Zone all day. Or if they play in London at 9:30, that game's over by 12:30, and you get to gear down for 7
hours of commercial-free football.
Yeah.
See, you already got me fired up for it.
I'm
Scott
super
Hansen.
excited. I might have to get like 36 wings or something.
Oh, wow.
Something ridiculous.
Okay.
Go ham. For me, my final thoughts, man, what I'm upset about more than anything, like you guys said, amazing summer, just incredible. And you weren't waiting for the other shoe to drop. By mid-May, you knew this team was for real, right? And so for me, that was just an awesome summer all the way around. Really enjoyed the season. It did end on a sour note, but what I'm upset the most about is I know how good this team is, and I know they're only going to get better, and I know what the future holds, and we have to wait 4.5 months to do it again.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you know how I feel about the fall and the winter, you know that it's going to be straight torture for me having to wait 4.5 months for this team to get back on the field.
How much total real time did the Orioles lead in that series? I think it was like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was they scored 2 runs in the bottom of the first inning in game 2.
And then they immediately gave it back.
And
that was quite a thud to end the season on. Like, I was there for the clincher. I don't know if you were there.
No, I was there the night before.
Win number 100. And leaving that ballpark, if you had told me, hey, they're only going to win one more game the rest of the year, I would have been like, really?
Yeah.
All right.
It sucked. It sucked. You know. But I'm really excited for Jackson Holiday. I like as good as Gunnar is, he might be better. Like I don't know that he's going to have the power that Gunnar has, but Jackson Holiday he might be better, which is scary because Gunnar's freakishly good. And
imagine those two turning double plays.
Woo, Luke. Come on. I feel about that how you just got hyped up for Red Zone. And then as far as the Ravens, I think the defense is legit, man. Like the defense, they're not giving up more than 17 points in a game to this point in the year. And all I can say about them is catch the effing football.
You go.
Just catch the effing football. All right. Thank you so much to Stan Fan Charles for his weekly segment. Luke, thank you for another awesome time in studio. We love having you in here. It's one of our favorite shows every time you come in. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Without you, we don't have a show. Thank you to all of our fans and listeners. Without you, we certainly do not have a show. Until next week,